Chapter 29:31. At the same time, in the lawless star sea, on the messy bloody plains. Ha 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 ha! Suddenly, a thunderous laughter rang out and resounded across a radius of 1,000,000 miles. Not only that, but the originally gloomy sky also became bright in an instant. On the ground that was crisscrossed with ravines, new shoots sprouted. The vigorous vitality diluted the smell of blood that filled the sky. Success! I finally succeeded. Qin Nan opened his eyes and was overjoyed. There was a strong sense of accomplishment and satisfaction in his chest. He had not let that senior down. The second part of the cultivation technique that he had created was definitely worthy of the name Datong Heaven Art. Young friend, congratulations. The Emperor Body and the Time Blade walked over and congratulated him at the same time. They could tell from the changes that had happened to Qin Nan that this new cultivation technique was at least an immortal emperor cultivation technique. I have troubled the two seniors this time. Qin Nan smiled and cupped his hands. Seniors, let me try out this cultivation technique of mine. Previously, it could only be said to be a test in the consciousness space. There was still a big difference between the feeling and the actual deduction. Qin Nan took a deep breath. After calming himself down, he immediately activated the Datong Heaven Art. A feeling of completeness filled Qin Nan's heart. A faintly discernible power started to grow in his heart. Body of origin source, Qin Nan shouted in his heart. His body and the aura that he exuded immediately changed faintly. The Emperor Body and the Time Blade were slightly surprised. What kind of cultivation technique was this? Why did it feel like his body was about to merge with this world? I didn't expect that after the Datong Heaven Art was completed, I could still activate the body of origin source even without absorbing the origin source of this world. Of course, there are still limitations. I can only use less than 30% of my power. Qin Nan was slightly delighted. He started to try using the power of the body of origin source to mobilize the power of this world. With a wave of his hand, it started to rain within 1,000 miles. With another wave of his hand, snow started to swirl in the air. He retracted his hand and a strong wind blew past, sweeping away all traces. He could also use the power of heaven and earth, but he was still greatly restricted. He could not even use 30% of it. Qin Nan nodded in satisfaction. Then, he changed the seal in his hand. The second part of the Great Assimilation Heavenly Scripture, the Myriad Worlds Origin Chapter, was activated. An invisible power was released from his body. Even the Emperor Body and the Time Blade didn't notice it. This power rapidly descended, passing through the Cloud-End Immortal Emperor's tomb without any obstruction, and entered the depths of the Celestial End Domain under the watchful eyes of countless quasi-emperors. Qin Nan's mind was attached to the force, allowing it to control its movements. Not long after, Qin Nan immediately sensed a boundless light. He felt a boundless feeling, like the vastness of the starry sky. This was the origin power of Juetian realm. In front of it, Qin Nan was like an ant in front of a mountain. Absorb. Qin Nan performed another seal. The invisible power turned into a giant hand that reached into the vast power. Buzz. The vast origin power didn't react, but the boundary weapon in Qin Nan's body began to vibrate vigorously. A strong sense of danger rose in his heart. He was the realm lord of Juetian realm. He had the duty to protect Juetian realm. The origin power of Juetian realm was the most important existence in Juetian realm. Therefore, he immediately received the warning. It seems like it won't be so easy to absorb the origin power of other realms in the future. Qin Nan murmured. He immediately suppressed the boundary weapon. His invisible hand also absorbed a bit of the origin power from the vast origin power and brought it back to his body at a shocking speed. Refine. What he'd taken didn't belong to Qin Nan yet, so he still had to refine it. Before long, the absorbed origin power gradually merged into Qin Nan's body and surfaced in his consciousness. Qin Nan's body of origin also began to strengthen at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Emperor body and Time Blade were shocked again. Good, good, good. Qin Nan opened his eyes. Now that everything was over, he looked pleasantly surprised. It was a success. But Qin Nan's eyes lit up. After this round of cultivation, Qin Nan came to a different realization. Although he could absorb origin power from Juetian realm, there was a limit to how much he could take. If his body of origin power was pushed to the limit, he wouldn't be able to take any more. On top of that, he also discovered that even though he'd completely refined the origin power of Juetian realm, its aura still belonged to Juetian realm. To put it simply, if he had the chance to absorb the origin power of Juetian realm and Alcade realm in the future, their auras would be different, and their natures would be different. Therefore, it would be impossible for them to merge into one and unleash their strongest power. Maybe there's still room for improvement in the Great Unity Heaven execution? The thought crossed Qin Nan's mind. This did not make him feel discouraged. Instead, it made him even more excited. If he could continue to improve, it meant that he was on the right path. He had even greater potential, and in the future, he could unleash even more domineering power. Besides, it was great news for a martial arts maniac with a connate body of martial arts. Your cultivation method isn't simple. The Emperor body couldn't help but exclaim. Not bad. Qin Nan responded with a smile. He suddenly thought of something and frowned. Why didn't the illusion show any signs of ending? He'd completed the Emperor Kowtow seal, created the Great Unity Heaven execution, and even obtained the Chaos art. Did he have to leave the core area and let the Dharma Immortal Assembly come to an end before the illusion would end? Chapter 2932. Qin Nan was a little nervous. That huge sense of joy had now vanished without a trace. What if the illusory realm did not end after the Dharma Assembly? Although he could still look for clues, who knew what the next clue would be? How long would it take? How long would it take? If he spent 100 years in the illusory realm, 100 years would have passed by the time he returned to the great upper realm. That would be terrible. No matter what, I can only go out first. Qin Nan took a deep breath and told the Time Saber and the martial monarch body about it. Indeed, there is no need to stay here. The Emperor body and Time Blade nodded in agreement. However, I'm afraid you will have to bury the Emperor Cloud Ju properly before you can open the exit. The Emperor body pointed and said, You have killed so many people. The big shots of various superpowers have sensed it. They wanted to force their way in, but they were stopped by the Emperor Cloud Ju. Qin Nan looked back and saw the Emperor Cloud Ju standing there alone. Although he was tall and gave off an inexplicable pressure, he looked very lonely. Qin Nan nodded and walked to the front of the Emperor Cloud Ju. After bowing 3 times, he used the power of heaven and earth to bury the Emperor Cloud Ju properly. After being buried, for some reason, the Emperor Cloud Ju's fleshly body started to dissipate. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Qin Nan returned to the realm heart space and saw that Jiang Hongxiu and the others were still in seclusion. He immediately injected a stream of pure energy into their bodies. Li Huai and Lu Chao were heavily injured and could not wake up yet. Jiang Hongxiu and the 3 Yu family ladies slowly walked out of their state of enlightenment. This matter is over. I am going to go out. Qin Nan smiled faintly. That's right. The Dharma Assembly is no longer in name. We can go out now. Yu Xueling nodded and said, Then let's go out. Jiang Hongxiu did not object. At the same time, at the entrance of the core area, glancing around, there were already dozens of cultivators here. Some of them were geniuses and some were peak divine emperors. They had set up all kinds of formations around them. They glanced around from time to time, looking rather haggard. No one spoke, and the atmosphere became even more stifling. A few days ago, Qin Nan had unleashed a massacre in a peerless manner, completely shattering the courage of these people. Now, as long as they closed their eyes, they would be able to recall that terrifying scene. Therefore, after they escaped from the bloody plains, they immediately rushed here. According to their calculations, Qin Nan's massacre would definitely infuriate the big shots outside. They would forcibly open the door and end the Dharma Immortal Assembly in advance. In the end, to their horror, after a few days, there was actually no sign of this place opening. This made them wonder if Qin Huan had used some kind of earth-shattering method to completely seal off this place so that he could kill them one by one later. Originally, they wanted to escape, but after careful consideration, if they were really sealed off, even if they escaped, where could they escape to? Instead of running away, they would rather stay here. Perhaps the big shots would be able to break through this place after spending some time. Therefore, for the past few days they were extremely terrified. As long as there was any movement around them, they would feel that the god of death was coming. Bang! Right at this moment, a deafening explosion resounded. The expressions of everyone present changed drastically as they subconsciously looked over. Immediately, they saw that the vast expanse of sky was like a tightly shut door that was slowly being pulled open by a supreme force at this moment. This is the door is open? A peaked divine emperor was so excited that his hands were trembling. Let's get out of here. They quickly reacted and immediately burst out with shocking speed. Like a swarm of locusts, they rushed forward in a hurry. Bang, bang, bang. However, before they could rush to the door, streams of extremely majestic auras and pressure surged towards them like streams of heavenly rivers, forcefully knocking them away and smashing them tens of thousands of miles away. These were all quasi-emperors from outside the core area. Furthermore, they were the boundary emperors who were filled with shocking anger. They finally made it in. What a great move, what a great move. Today, I would like to see who has such a move. Killing my successor, I will not let him live under the same sky as me. Monstrous murderous auras burst out, causing the heavens and earth within a radius of a few million li to change color. Someone's here? The sect leader of the Supreme Sacred Sect was the first to notice the cultivators. His powerful aura immediately pressed down on them as he said in a cold voice, "Who is it? Who is it? Who has become the Realm Master? What happened when we were fighting for the boundary weapon?" At that moment, Jiang Huaiming, Jiang Huai, Jiang Guang, and the rest of the boundary emperors came to their senses and stared at those people. This question had been in their minds for a few days, and they had discussed it many times. Especially those whose young clan leaders, young sect leaders, and personal disciples had not died yet. They could not help but feel their hearts hanging high. For example, Jiang Huaiming had subconsciously clenched his fist. An unprecedented sense of nervousness rose in his heart. He was even more nervous than when he was trying to break through to the boundary emperor realm. Is it Hong Xiu? Is it Hong Xiu? Jiang Huaiming could not hold it in and asked on the spot. It's not her. A genius's reply instantly caused Jiang Huaiming's heart to sink to the bottom. The boundary emperors of the Zhao clan, Yi clan, Lin clan, and Meng clan all secretly let out sighs of relief. It's fine as long as it's not Jiang Hongxiu. It's Qin Huan. The proud son of heaven said loudly. Qin Huan has become the realm master and is slaughtering everyone there. He wants to kill everyone. His words were like rolling thunder. Chapter 29:33. Qin Huan? At this moment, the sect leader of the Supreme Holy Gate, the head of the Zhao clan, the head of the Yi clan, the head of the Lin clan, and other famous quasi-emperors were all shocked, and their faces were filled with disbelief. In the past few days, they had been making guesses among those who were still alive. Among them, they felt that Jiang Hongxiu, Li Huai, Lu Chao, and the others had a higher chance. This also caused the Jiang family, the Li family, and the other forces to be in a state of hostility. The atmosphere was cold. However, they would never have thought that the person who would truly become the Realm Lord would be Qin Huan, the good-for-nothing from the Alcade World's Qin family. Moreover, they clearly remembered that when Qin Huan had entered the core area, he was only at the peak of the sovereign realm. Although he had the Emperor physique and Emperor artifact, it was already commendable that Qin Huan hadn't been eliminated so quickly, not to mention that he had stood out among the other boundary emperors and obtained the boundary artifact. How is this possible? Jiang Huaiming was even more shocked. As his son-in-law, he had investigated Qin Huan's background thoroughly. He had even secretly arranged several tests to test Qin Huan's character. In his opinion, Qin Huan was a good-for-nothing. He didn't have any ambition at all, and his heart wasn't too bad. It was just that he would often do some stupid things. It was also because of this that Jiang Huaiming had chosen Qin Huan as his son-in-law. After all, the Qin family had so many resources. If Qin Huan couldn't use them, wouldn't Jiang Hongxiu be able to use them? However, how did such a person become the Realm Lord? At that moment, a faint roar came from afar. All the boundary emperors present, as well as the other cultivators, felt a majestic aura flying towards them at an astonishing speed. They subconsciously looked over and saw Qin Nan, Jiang Hongxiu, and the three ladies from the Yu family flying over from afar. You all came in? Qin Nan glanced at the figures with overwhelming auras. His expression remained calm, without the slightest hint of fear. The aura of a peak immortal king. Become one with the heavens and earth, receive endless support. He really did become the realm master of Juetian realm. When the various quasi-emperors saw the changes in Qin Nan's body, they could not help but feel shocked again. They were all people who had experienced countless ups and downs, but after seeing this scene with their own eyes, they still lost their composure. It really is the realm master. Jiang Huaiming took in a deep breath. He subconsciously thought back to that day when the Jiang family held a clan meeting. This good-for-nothing son-in-law of his had rejected Jiang Xing and Jiang Chu's attempts to rope him in and announced in a high-profile manner that he was going to fight for the Realm Lord position. At that time, all the proud sons of heaven of the Jiang family had unreservedly mocked and ridiculed Qin Huan. Even his father-in-law didn't think that Qin Huan could succeed. He only felt that Qin Huan was mischievous and didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, so he wanted to play. However, who would have thought that he would succeed? With the cultivation of the sovereign realm, he had defeated countless geniuses of the peak deity emperor realm and become the sector lord. What a good Qin family, what a good Qin Huan! You really hid your strength well, deceiving everyone. The Supreme Holy Gates sect master finally regained his senses. Boundless holy light surged out from his body, illuminating the surroundings like it was daytime. He shouted sternly, "Tell me, did you kill my disciple, Dongwang Qin?" Before Qin Nan could reply, those proud sons of heaven and peak deity emperors who had been feeling uneasy for the past few days suddenly regained their confidence and spoke one after another. They were all killed by Qin Huan. After Qin Huan became the sector lord, he completely disregarded everything and killed everyone. I saw it with my own eyes. Qin Huan killed Jiang Chu and Jiang Xing on the spot without any regard for family ties. I also saw Yi Taiji and Lin Qing being killed by Qin Huan. Zhao Wushuang and Meng Dongji had emperor weapons to protect themselves. Although they weren't killed, they were severely injured. Voices rang out one after another, criticizing Qin Nan's crimes. Right at this moment, two explosions rang out. The heaven-pardoned sword and the thousand snow wheel were covered in cracks and had lost their luster. The two emperor weapons, the heaven-pardoned sword and the thousand snow wheel, flew over from afar at the same time. If the Zhao family's patriarch and Meng family's patriarch hadn't seen these two emperor weapons before, they wouldn't have dared to recognize them. How were these emperor weapons of their families? They weren't even comparable to deity emperor weapons. Senior. The two patriarchs' faces changed and they walked forward. The heaven-pardoned sword and the thousand snow wheel had been hiding for the past few days, and they no longer had the energy to speak. When they saw the two patriarchs appear, they immediately flew into their bodies and threw Zhao Wushuang and Meng Dongji out. The two proud sons of heaven were now covered in blood, and there were wounds of different sizes on their bodies. Their auras were weak and they didn't have any consciousness. They were severely injured. Wushuang, Dongji. The two patriarchs couldn't help but shout. Immediately, they summoned pure energy and channeled it into their bodies. When Qin Nan saw this, his expression didn't change at all. He knew what kind of situation he was about to face. However, with his current cultivation, even if he couldn't defeat these boundary emperors, he was confident that he could escape with the help of the emperor weapons and time blade. Do I need to escape before this Dharma immortal assembly can be considered to have ended? When will this illusion end? Qin Nan thought to himself. The more he thought about it, the more likely it was. Therefore, he looked at the boundary emperors and said fearlessly, "That's right. I killed them all." The Supreme Holy Gate's patriarch's expression changed. The holy light emitted from his body became brighter and brighter. His murderous aura also became more terrifying. Good, good, good. You clearly know that Dong Wangqing is the young patriarch of our Supreme Holy Gate. How dare you kill him without hesitation? How audacious! Today, I will use your blood to pay tribute to my disciple. His shout immediately caused the quasi-emperors from the various factions to react one after another. Chapter 29-34. Qin Huan, you've committed a heinous crime by killing our Yi-clan's young master. Today, no matter what, our Yi-clan will make you pay with your blood. You'll wish you were dead. The Yi-clan leader roared. A terrifying murderous aura erupted from his small body. It was not any weaker than the Supreme Holy Gate's patriarchs. Qin Huan, Lin Qing is my only son. I clearly placed a mark in his body. I only hoped that you would spare him when I was about to kill him. Why do you have to kill him? The patriarch of the Lin clan let out a furious roar. Rays of golden light burst out from his body as the supreme treasures he had refined began to awaken one after another. Qin Huan, someone as heinous as you is not fit to be the world lord of the Juetian domain. Today, our Zhao clan will enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and kill you here. You even killed your own brother-in-law. You've completely fallen into the demonic path and become a demon. Our Meng clan will never allow a demon like you to become the world lord of the Juetian domain. Qin Huan, you killed my successor. Qin Huan, angry roars exploded in the sky. Different auras erupted and various lights shone at the same time. In this Dharma immortal assembly, almost all the top factions of the 5 realms had come. Furthermore, from each faction, there were at least 2 quasi-emperors present. This was especially so for the Juetian domain, where 3 quasi-emperors were present. The number of geniuses Qin Nan had killed was innumerable. There were at least 40 of them. Therefore, he had basically offended half of the top forces. There were close to 30 boundary emperors. As for the remaining forces, although none of their geniuses had died at the hands of Qin Nan, many of their outstanding disciples had been killed by Qin Nan. This did not make them angry, but it put them in a bad mood. It also gave them a sufficient excuse. Now that Qin Nan had angered everyone, why didn't they take advantage of the situation and kill Qin Nan? One had to know that this Qin Huan had concealed himself for decades in order to make everyone think that he was a good-for-nothing with insufficient cultivation. Moreover, he had been able to stand out from so many geniuses. It could be seen from this that this Qin Huan was absolutely a very terrifying figure. Such a person had become a realm lord. If he was allowed to continue developing, and with the support of the Qin family and the Jiang family, it would not take long for him to become a quasi-emperor. He would have a great chance of becoming an immortal emperor. Therefore, this kid must be eliminated. Therefore, at this moment, there were more than 50 quasi-emperors who were bursting with rage and killing intent. Just the aura they released caused the entrance to swell more than 5 times its original size. Not only that, the sky within a radius of 10 million li had turned into chaos. There were even places where the void had completely collapsed. Strong winds and blizzards swept up from within. The ground in an area of millions of kilometers trembled violently, and large areas sank and cracked apart. Almost at the same time, dozens of God's favored ones and peak divine emperors suffered a huge impact. Many of them spat out a mouthful of blood and were severely injured. Fear was written all over their faces. Even the 3 women of the Yu family standing beside Qin Nan felt a great impact in their hearts. Their faces were filled with shock. This scene was simply too terrifying. If they were to go all out, perhaps 1/10 of the land of the Juetian realm would be destroyed. How dare you! The emperor body shouted and appeared at the same time as the time blade. Now that Qin Nan's cultivation was equivalent to a peak immortal king, they could already use 80% of their cultivation. Therefore, the aura they released was stronger than every quasi-emperor. However, it could not be compared to the fury of the 50 quasi-emperors. Father, Elder. Jiang Hongxiu immediately transmitted her voice. Our Jiang family must protect Qin Huan today. It was also him who helped me obtain the exquisite inheritance and attain the exquisite divine body. Exquisite inheritance. Exquisite divine body? Jiang Huaiming, Jiang Huai, and Jiang Guang held their breath. At their cultivation level, even if Jiang Hongxiu did not explain in detail, how could they not know what the exquisite inheritance was? Yes, protect, we must protect. How can we not protect my son-in-law? Jiang Huaiming reacted and his breathing quickened. It was rare for him to lose his composure. Qin Huan's sudden appearance had shown everyone his potential, ability, and aptitude. In addition to the Qin family's foundation, Qin Huan had a great chance of becoming an immortal emperor in the future. Although Hongxiu did not become the lord of the realm and did not meet his expectations, she had obtained the exquisite inheritance and attained the exquisite divine body. Her chances of becoming an immortal emperor in the future were not lower than Qin Huan's. Didn't that mean that the Jiang family had a great chance of having 2 immortal emperors? That was a family with 2 immortal emperors. If they succeeded, the Jiang family would reach an unprecedented level. They could even move the Jiang family into the legendary 10 realms. Do you think you can kill a member of the Jiang family as you wish? Jiang Huaiming shouted without any hesitation. At the same time, he took out an item and released a monstrous suppression. Great Void Heavenly Steel. Jiang family's arch weapon. Jiang Huaiming had specially brought it to protect Jiang Hongxiu. Jiang Huai and Jiang Quan understood the reason behind it and followed behind Jiang Huaiming. At the same time, they transmitted their thoughts to the rest of the Jiang family. This was going to be a great battle. The battlefield was definitely not limited to the Yunjue Heavenly Palace. At the end of the battle, the flames of war would definitely spread to the Juxian domain. Hence, they had to be prepared in advance. As for the Li family, Yu family, and Lu Chao's boundary emperors, they were hesitant because the 3 ladies from the Yu family had immediately informed them of the situation in the boundary artifact. They had originally wanted to kill Qin Huan, but their descendants and clansmen had formed deep friendships with Qin Huan and Jiang Hongxiu. They had obtained great benefits, so they could not make a move. Moreover, if Qin Huan and Jiang Hongxiu survived this calamity, they would also obtain great benefits. Of course, they would not help at this time. Jiang Huaiming, at this point, you still want to protect Qin Huan? You are delusional. The Supreme Sacred sect leader's voice rumbled like thunder. I have already issued a kill order. If you insist on protecting him today, you will have to bear the wrath of all of us. If you are not careful, your Jiang family will be annihilated. Since the Supreme Sacred sect leader had made his move, the boundary emperors of the other forces also started to make their moves. Waves of terrifying power were about to erupt and completely break through this small independent space. Chapter 29:35. In the Alcade world, there were a total of 9 major forces. They were the 3 sects, one sect, and 4 great families. Each of them was about the same level as the Jiang family. Basically, they had 3 quasi-emperors and emperor weapons or emperor bodies. In terms of overall strength, the Alcade world was stronger than any of the 5 worlds. When Jiang Huaiming asked Jiang Hongxiu and Qin Huan to become Dao companions, he also considered this point. Speaking of which, ever since the major forces of the Alcade world received the Heaven Conscription Order from the Emperor bodies, the grand event of the Alcade world was temporarily ended under Heavenly Elders' strong stance. The 9 major forces quickly took action and sent out their men. 9 quasi-emperors, 13 peak immortal emperors, more than 30 peak immortal kings and a few peak divine emperor geniuses. On the surface, this lineup could be said to be quite powerful, but in fact, it wasn't. One should know that Qin Huan's grandfather, a quasi-emperor giant, was plotted against in another world. He was suppressed by 5 quasi-emperors and was severely injured. Later on, Qin Huan's grandfather couldn't take this lying down and issued the Heaven Conscription Order. Almost all the top experts of the 9 major powers came out of their nest. 23 quasi-sovereigns and more than 90 peak immortal emperors came. There were even 5 major powers that brought their own emperor weapons and bodies. This incident caused a great commotion. 3 of the 5 quasi-emperors were killed and 2 were severely injured. This made countless people aware of the terror of the Qin family. In addition, there were also Qin Huan's great-grandfather and great-grandfather. Every time they activated the Heaven Conscription Order, they could summon more than 20 quasi-emperors. This was because, starting from Immortal Emperor Zhu Fa, the Qin family had given the other major forces of the Alcade world a lot of favors. Moreover, almost every member of the Qin family who issued the Heaven Conscription Order could be called a formidable person. After issuing the Heaven Conscription Order, they had also brought great benefits to the 9 major forces. Therefore, with this comparison, one could see the difference between them. Furthermore, the reason why 9 quasi-emperors were able to come this time was because of the Heavenly Elder's powerful words. The Guangwu Gate that the Heavenly Elder belonged to sent out all their quasi-emperors. The other 2 sects, one sect and one religion, were also affected. In addition to the ancestral behest, they also sent out 6 quasi-emperors. As for the 4 major families of Alcade world, they didn't even send out a single quasi-emperor. They only sent out a few peak immortal emperors and immortal kings symbolically. More importantly, there were even geniuses from the 4 great clans who had come along. Generally speaking, when a member of the Qin family issued a Heaven Conscription proclamation, it would definitely be an earth-shattering event. The 9 top forces rarely even sent out immortal kings, let alone peak immortal emperors. At this moment, in the Cloud Zhu Heavenly Palace, Elder Sky led the 8 quasi-emperors to charge ahead. When they sensed the earth-shattering auras, they could not help but be shocked. Dozens of quasi-emperors unleashed their killing intent? What kind of major event had happened? What did Qin Huan have to do with this? Everyone, although we owe the Qin family a great debt, we have also helped the Qin family a lot over the years. Therefore, if Qin Huan's crime is serious, we should try our best to remain silent and let the Heavenly Elder and the others take action. A thought flashed across one of the quasi-emperor's minds, and he quickly transmitted his voice. That's what I thought too. Several quasi-emperors nodded in agreement. Not long after, the 9 quasi-emperors saw an even more shocking scene. Why were the killing intent of these quasi-emperors all directed at Qin Huan? What did Qin Huan do to actually offend so many great powers in one go? Before they could react, the Heavenly Elder who was leading the charge almost instantly flew into a rage and shouted in a thunderous voice. Not only that, He reacted almost instinctively. He clapped his skinny palm forward, and an ancient bronze pagoda immediately flew out from his palm. It instantly expanded to 10,000 zhang tall and unleashed a terrifying emperor aura, suppressing Qin Huan and the others. Hong Long. A thunderous explosion resounded. What was surprising was that such a strange impact didn't cause any ripples in the void. However, only those who had reached the immortal emperor realm could see that the pagoda had completely suppressed the void. It was as though a huge crack had been carved out on the ground. If one wanted to go to the other side, they would have to cross that crack. If those quasi-emperors wanted to attack Qin Huan, they would have to destroy the ancient pagoda. Heavenly Elder. The other two quasi-emperors from the Guangwu sect changed their expressions at the same time. Apart from the Heavenly Elder's influence, they also agreed with the Heavenly Elder's words that they had to abide by the rules of the sect and the teachings of their ancestors. However, judging from the current situation, Qin Huan had most likely caused a huge disaster. Although they could help him, they couldn't be so overbearing. What if he caused a disaster for the Guangwu sect? Alright. The other quasi-emperors snickered in their hearts. In this case, the Guangwu sect would bear the brunt of the disaster, and they wouldn't be implicated. Since they had fulfilled the teachings of their ancestors, they would be able to live in peace. At this moment, due to the Heavenly Elder's shocking attack, Jiang Huaiming and the other quasi-emperors, including the sect leader of the Supreme Sacred Sect, the Patriarch of the Zhao family, and the Patriarch of the Yi family, all looked over at the Heavenly Elder. The Heavenly Elder of the Alcade world? The Qin family's Heaven Conscription Order? The sect leader of the Supreme Sacred Sect and the others narrowed their eyes. Qin Huan's father was already dead and Qin Huan was now the patriarch of the Qin family. In terms of status, he was definitely on the same level as them. Qin Nan was also stunned for a moment before he realized that this was the backup plan that the Time Blade and the Emperor Physique had prepared beforehand. Humph! The Time Blade's cold voice rang in Qin Nan's mind. I didn't expect that only 9 quasi-emperors would come for the Heaven Conscription Order. 3 of them are from the Guangwu sect, and the 4 great families didn't send anyone. In this world, it's useless to rely on friendship. There was a hint of anger in the Emperor Physique's voice. Back then, Immortal Emperor Zhu Fa was biased towards the 4 great families and helped them a lot. He even resolved the danger of their families being exterminated. Later on, every generation of the Qin family didn't mistreat the 4 great families. They actually repay us in this way. Qin Nan didn't feel anything. This kind of thing wasn't uncommon. Moreover, 9 quasi-emperors had come. It was already a good thing that they could relieve some of the pressure on him. Chapter 2936. At the same time, in the 9-colored light path of the Cloud Zhu Heavenly Palace, ancient ships that were suffused with strands of divine light were slowly floating forward. The people standing on these ancient ships were the immortal King Realm experts from the 9 great forces of the Alcade world and the proud sons of heaven of the 4 great clans. Originally, when they rushed over from the Alcade Light Realm, they were closely following behind the 9 quasi-emperors. But who would have thought that after arriving at the famous Cloud End Heavenly Palace, Elder Sky would be so anxious that he would explode with an even faster speed, leaving them behind. When they saw this, they were happy to see it happen, so they simply moved forward slowly. Originally, they had followed along mainly as a symbol to tell the world that they were not heartless and did not disobey the teachings of their ancestors. No matter what trouble Qin Huan had caused, they did not need to interfere. Of course, there was another point. They had come willingly mainly to see the Cloud Zhu Heavenly Palace. Perhaps they could even gain some benefits from it. At the bow of one of the ancient ships stood 5 youths. They were the prodigies of the 4 great clans. Damn, this is not a small scene. There are actually more than 50 boundary emperors erupting with killing intent. A short-haired youth shouted exaggeratedly. If they really fight, the entire light-shaking realm will sink, right? It seems that this Dharma immortal assembly has ended early, and someone from a certain force has become the realm lord, causing a series of chain reactions. A good-looking woman calmly analyzed. The Jiang family may have gained a lot this time, and is being targeted by many forces. Therefore, our Lord Heir may have been bewitched and wants to show off, so he issued the heaven-conquering order. In other realms, there was generally no such title as heir. Only the light-shaking realm was special. Every descendant of the Qin family would be called heir by the 9 top forces. But now that they were calling him Lord Heir, it was full of mockery. Haha, Little Snow's analysis is right. This is most likely the case. TSK, TSK, TSK. The heir must be very happy to see all of us running here to cheer for him, right? Another long-haired youth spoke. They didn't use divine sense to communicate with each other. Although they didn't deliberately raise their voices, the surrounding immortal kings could hear them clearly. Immediately, an immortal king pretended to be humorous and said, "In comparison, I would like to see how the heavenly elder would feel when he rushed over anxiously only to see such a scene." As soon as he said this, the cultivators on every divine boat were amused. They all burst out laughing. The short-haired youth from before laughed the most exaggeratedly. At the same time, he was also the fastest to retract his laughter. He sighed with emotion and said, "Although Elder Tian is a disciple of the light world, he has always devoted himself to the development of the light-shaking world's martial arts. He is extremely fair in his conduct, and he values relationships and righteousness. It's just that he is a bit old-fashioned. Now that such a hedonistic son has appeared in the Qin family, treating the Qin family like this is really not worth it. I hope that through this incident the heavens will wake up in time." That's right. Why should we help such a hedonistic son of rich parents? Haven't we helped the Qin family enough over the years? Exactly. In my opinion, the rules of the heavenly conscription order should be abolished. Using people like us to help a piece of trash is purely a waste of time and resources. That's right, the Qin family has already declined. It's time for them to withdraw from the stage. Everyone agreed. They had all kinds of dissatisfaction with the Qin family since a long time ago. The divine boats continued to move forward. Although they weren't moving very quickly, they soon arrived at the core area. Of course, with so many boundary emperors releasing their auras, they naturally wouldn't rashly join in. All of them had the mentality of watching a good show and stopped at a corner. At the end of their line of sight, at the core area's broken entrance, the Supreme Sacred Sect leader reacted quickly. When he saw the people from the light-shaking world, not only did he not feel any fear, but it made him even more determined to kill Qin Huan. He immediately shouted, "Elder Tian, is the light-shaking world really going to stand up for Qin Huan?" Qin Huan killed the Supreme Sacred Sect's young sect leader. Today, the Supreme Sacred Sect swears to kill him. Whoever dares to help him will be the Supreme Sacred Sect's mortal enemy. The other boundary emperors had the same mentality as the Supreme Sacred Sect. They immediately shouted angrily, "That's right, Qin Huan must die today. Whoever dares to help him will be our mortal enemy. Don't think that just because the light-shaking world is far away, we can't do anything to you." The Lin family's sect leader said even more ruthlessly, "Light-shaking world, listen up. Our Lin family's strength is indeed not much. But if you dare to protect the demon Qin Huan, our Lin family will do our best to exterminate the next generation of your family." More than 50 boundary emperors were angered at the same time. That was an extremely shocking scene. Elder Tian and the other boundary emperors immediately felt an incomparably huge pressure. That murderous aura seemed to have materialized and condensed into an immemorial mountain that pressed down on their bodies. Other than Elder Tian, the other 8 boundary emperors' expressions changed drastically. They had never expected Qin Huan to cause such a huge trouble. After seeing them arrive, these boundary emperors didn't move at all. Instead, they swore to kill him. They definitely couldn't participate in this matter. Threatening me? Do you think I'm so easily scared? Elder Tian wasn't afraid at all. In fact, he was even angered by the other party's attitude. He shouted, "Our light-shaking world's heir isn't someone you can touch. Use whatever methods you have. I'll accompany you to the end." The other 8 Boundary Emperors' expressions changed drastically. Especially the 2 Boundary Emperors from the light-shaking world. Their hearts instantly sank to the bottom. They had provoked a huge disaster. At this moment, Jiang Huaiming had already reacted. When he heard this, he immediately shouted, "Elder Tian, well said. This Dharma Immortal Gathering is a competition between the younger generation. Whether one lives or dies depends on one's luck." On the surface, these people seemed to be awe-inspiring, but in reality, they were jealous that Qin Huan had become the realm master of the light-shaking world. They were worried that Qin Huan would completely mature. "We definitely won't allow something like this to happen. Jiang family leader, don't worry. Qin Huan is our light-shaking world's heir," Elder Tian subconsciously replied. However, he suddenly thought of something and his voice suddenly rose a few octaves. "What did you say? Realm Master? Qin Huan has become the Realm Master of the light-shaking world?" Chapter 29:37. His words were like a bolt of lightning to the other quasi-emperors and immortal lords of the Alcade world. They instinctively looked at Qin Huan. On one of the divine boats that had stopped at the edge, the short-haired youth who had spoken earlier could not help but laugh out loud. "Did I hear wrongly? Did someone just say that Qin Huan has become the realm lord of the Juetian world? What kind of joke is this? If someone like Qin Huan can become the realm lord, then I can definitely become an immortal, just like the others." He instinctively looked at Qin Huan in the distance. His eyes instantly narrowed. The word emperor seemed to be stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say it out loud. Qin Huan's mysterious state where he blended in with the heavens and earth. Qin Huan's incomparably majestic aura. Qin Huan's mysterious aura. There was no difference between him and a realm lord. The only difference was that most realm lords were peak boundary emperors, and only a few were celestial emperors. Rumble. At this moment it was as if peerless lightning had struck the consciousness of the boundary emperors, celestial emperors, immortal kings, and the other geniuses from the Alcade world. Their faces were filled with shock, and they couldn't believe their eyes. Their shock was several times greater than when the Supreme Sacred Gates sect master and the others had heard the news. This was because Qin Huan was the next successor of the Qin family. Since Qin Huan's birth, the entire Juetian world's attention had been focused on Qin Huan. Qin Huan's birth ceremony. Qin Huan's first birthday ceremony. Qin Huan's coming-of-age ceremony. Qin Huan's apprenticeship ceremony. Almost everyone from the Alcade world had attended or heard of it. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they had watched Qin Huan grow up day by day. They had watched him gradually lose himself in the pampering. He had been naughty since he was young, and when he grew up and lost his parents, he had completely fallen into depravity. He no longer cultivated and had become a tyrant. Qin Huan had done at least 100 things in the Juetian world. However, a good-for-nothing like him had actually surpassed the other geniuses in a grand event like the Assembly of Immortals and become the realm master of Juetian? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The 5 geniuses from the 4 great clans were all in a daze as they mumbled to themselves. They were completely unable to accept the truth of this matter. Sector Lord? The master of the Juetian realm? After Elder Sky discovered this fact, he muttered to himself a few times before suddenly reacting. His wrinkled face revealed great surprise and joy, and he couldn't help but laugh wildly at the sky. Good, good, good. As expected of a descendant of the Qin family, as expected of a descendant of the Qin family, as expected of a descendant of the 10,000 ancient tribulations, able to achieve heaven-defying feat. Ever since his lifespan had exceeded 8,000 years, Elder Tian had never been as happy as he was today. Although he valued relationships and followed the rules, if it wasn't for the Qin family, he definitely wouldn't have forcefully summoned all the quasi-emperors of the Sect of Light after the Heaven Conscription Order had been issued. He also wouldn't have forced the other sects that owed him to send out their people. This was because he had always had a special relationship with the Qin family. When he was young, he had encountered a great calamity and his parents had almost been killed. It was a descendant of the Qin family who had saved him and his parents. Later on, he had stepped onto the path of cultivation. Due to his lack of talent, he had remained unknown and was treated with contempt. However, one day, he had met a descendant of the Qin family who had given him a great opportunity. After he had matured, that descendant of the Qin family had passed away. Before he could repay him, his sect had encountered another great calamity and offended a quasi-emperor. Just as his sect was about to be destroyed, that descendant of the Qin family had saved him again. Later on, he had received the inheritance of an ancestor of the Qin family. That was how he had soared to the heavens and achieved what he had today. Therefore, more than anyone else, he sincerely hoped that Qin Huan would be able to mature and continue the legend of the Qin family. Back then, when Qin Huan had been rebellious, hedonistic, and committed all kinds of crimes, Elder Tian could be said to have been the most heartbroken person besides the Emperor's body and the Time Blade. Back then, in order to correct Qin Huan's character, Elder Tian had spent an entire 3 years to create all kinds of illusions for Qin Huan to polish. He had only let Qin Huan go when he was completely disappointed. Although he had comforted himself that it was fine for Qin Huan to be an ordinary hedonistic son, there was still a trace of hope in the depths of his heart that had yet to be completely extinguished. Sector Lord, we've come at the right time. The other 8 quasi-emperors also came to their senses and were pleasantly surprised. Although their feelings were completely different from Elder Tian's, they instantly thought of something even further back in time. Qin Huan had been able to compete with so many geniuses and become the realm master of the celestial end realm as a ruler. From this, it could be seen how powerful and extraordinary Qin Huan had become after turning over a new leaf. Moreover, with Qin Huan's status as the realm master and the Qin family's foundation, Qin Huan would most likely step into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm in no time and had great hopes of becoming an immortal emperor. Although the current Alcade realm was powerful, there was no immortal emperor. Oh no! At the same time, the celestial lords from the 4 great clans came to their senses and their expressions immediately turned ugly. Their hearts fell to the bottom of the valley. One had to know that their actions today clearly showed that they no longer owed the Qin family a favor. Especially when compared to the 3 factions, one sect, they seemed even more heartless. Wouldn't Qin Huan hold a grudge in the future? Obviously he would. Even if Qin Huan didn't find any problems on the surface and wouldn't kill them ruthlessly, when Qin Huan grew up, he could suppress them a little and then get rid of them with all kinds of good things. That was completely possible. Cold sweat broke out on the backs of these celestial lords. They hurriedly used special methods to send this matter back to their respective clans. They had to think of a good way to erase this grudge. Chapter 2938. Patriarch Jiang, don't worry. I won't allow anyone to kill our Alcade realm's heir. Elder Sky's smile faded, and a domineering aura burst out from his skinny body. Even if I have to burn all my lifespan and my old bones, I won't allow anyone to kill Qin Huan. Thank you, Elder Sky. Heavenly Elder, please be at ease. Qin Huan is my Jiang Huaiming's son-in-law and also a member of my Jiang family. Today Jiang Huaiming's face lit up with joy. If that was the case, the chances of him protecting Qin Huan would greatly increase. Don't be so noisy. I'd like to see how you're going to protect Qin Huan. The Supreme Sacred Sex Patriarch roared. Since things had come to this, there was no need to talk nonsense. He threw out a punch, and boundless holy light burst forth from the tip of his fist. The holy light transformed into a torrential river that crashed into the pagoda. The might of a punch was able to easily shake the pagoda. One had to admit that the Supreme Sacred Sex Patriarch's cultivation was at the top even among the quasi-emperors. Kill. The Patriarch of the Zhao clan, the Patriarch of the Yi clan, the Patriarch of the Lin clan, and the rest of the half-monarchs were completely enraged. One after another, the monarch weapons of their clans rose into the air and executed terrifying forbidden arts. Great lightless incantation. Elder Sky also displayed the frightening strength of the strongest light-shaking realm cultivator. He pointed a finger in front of him, and a formless energy surged forth like a heavenly river, surging towards the 50 or so quasi-emperors. Elder Sky, we're here to help you. The remaining 8 quasi-emperors no longer needed Elder Sky's supervision. They took the initiative to charge into the battlefield and unleashed one forbidden technique after another. The only regret they had was that they couldn't bring their clan's emperor weapons with them this time. Qin Huan is the Alcade realm's heir. No one can touch him. The immortal emperors behind them were originally not qualified to participate in this battle. However, they had no choice but to bite the bullet and shout loudly. They formed a formation and attacked forward. On the other side, Di Qin wielded the time saber and slashed out saber qi. Jiang Huaiming and the other 2 quasi-emperors of the Jiang clan worked together to activate the Great Void Heavenly Steel, pushing the Emperor Artifact's power to the maximum. The chanting of the Great Void Immortal Emperor could be heard. Seniors, seize the opportunity and bring Qin Huan out. We're enough here. Jiang Huaiming roared. No need. Unexpectedly, Qin Huan was the first to speak, and he said via voice transmission, Seniors, thank you all for lending a hand this time. Junior will remember it in his heart. Seniors, you only need to help me gain 30 breaths of time. I have a way to shake them off. At first, Qin Huan was unmoved by so many quasi-emperors because he had nothing to fear. Although before the people of the Alcade Light realm arrived, with the power of the Emperor's body and the Time Blade, as well as the 3 quasi-emperors of the Jiang family, they could only buy him 5 to 10 breaths of time, but that was enough for him to use. However, in such a short time, even if he used the ability once, he would not be able to shake off all the quasi-emperors. He would have to expend a lot of effort to use the ability again. However, they now had more than 10 quasi-emperors, so they could fully utilize the ability to the maximum within 30 breaths of time to shake off all the quasi-emperors. Although he was a relatively weak realm lord, he was still a realm lord. How could he be killed so easily? Qin Huan, don't be reckless. You've just become a realm lord. Your strength is only equivalent to a peak Dao realm immortal emperor. You. Jiang Huaiming subconsciously wanted to stop Qin Huan, but on second thought, Qin Huan was even able to become a realm lord. Would he be reckless? We'll help you, Heavenly Elder said resolutely. Thank you, seniors. Qin Nan immediately closed his eyes upon seeing this. He communicated with the immortal ascension boulder with his will to fully activate it. No one sensed that there was a formless power spreading in all directions like the waves of the sea. In the entire Juetian domain, there was an invisible breeze blowing through the land, forests, oceans, mountains, and grasslands. It was as if something incredible was brewing. At this moment, more than 60 quasi-emperors had already started fighting. All kinds of incredible moves were being executed continuously. The collision between them was indescribable. Many immortal kings and heaven's prides who had retreated to a distant place could only look up and see that the entrance to the core had been completely destroyed. Large patches of void had collapsed, and even the various terrifying restrictions of the Cloud Ju Heavenly Palace had been crushed to pieces in an instant. If this battle continued, it would not take long before the famous Cloud Ju Immortal Emperor's land of inheritance could no longer hold on. It would be shattered into pieces and scattered between the heavens and earth. When the sect leader of the Supreme Sacred Sect and the rest suppressed Jiang Huaiming, Elder Tian, and the rest, 29 breaths had passed. Qin Nan's closed eyes slowly opened. His eyes had turned blue. The aura he exuded rose by itself. In the blink of an eye, it surpassed the level of a peak immortal king. When the Supreme Holy Gates Patriarch saw this, he couldn't help but have an extremely bad premonition. He immediately shouted, "Qin Huan wants to escape. Everyone, use whatever methods you have. We definitely can't let him leave just like that." When the other quasi-emperors heard this, they immediately fought even more fiercely. Jiang Huaiming, Elder Tian, and the rest of the quasi-emperors were beaten until they could not free themselves. They subconsciously thought that one of the quasi-emperors would take Qin Huan away. Everyone, farewell. 30 breaths of time had passed, and a wisp of a smile couldn't help but appear on the corners of Qin Huan's mouth. Even though they would never see each other again, he didn't forget to speak fiercely. "I'll remember what happened today, and I'll properly get even with all of you once I attain the immortal Emperor realm." After saying this, he formed a seal with his hands. A brilliant blue light immediately burst out from his body and shot into the chaotic void. "I am the master of the Cloud Ju Immortal Emperor. No calamity can touch me." A majestic force burst out from the void. It was like a giant hand that grabbed Qin Nan's body and was about to bring him far away. Just as Qin Nan was about to disappear, Qin Nan suddenly felt a hand on his shoulder. Before he could think about it, he had already disappeared. He had completely disappeared from the Cloud Ju Heavenly Palace without leaving a trace. "That's the Realm Lord's true body?" The quasi-emperors opened their eyes wide. Their hearts were in turmoil. How was this possible? Chapter 2939. If a world lord wanted to kill a genius or a powerful cultivator of that world, there would be many obstacles and he wouldn't be able to go on a killing spree. At the same time, it was extremely difficult to kill a sector lord in this world. The world lord's true body was the life-saving method of all world lords. As long as the world lord's true body was displayed in that world, he would receive the protection of that world. He would be able to be transported to an absolutely safe place by the power of heaven and earth in an instant. Even a boundary emperor who was proficient in divination would need at least 2 to 3 days to deduce a trace of the world lord's true body. However, after 2 to 3 days, the world lord would be able to leave that safe place and be completely safe. However, there was a crucial point. All the boundary emperors knew that if they wanted to display the world lord's true body, they would have to become a world lord for 10 years before they could obtain this ability from that world. Before 10 years, no matter how big the calamity was, they wouldn't be able to display this ability. It was because of this that when a world lord was born, various forces would think of ways to kill him. If they couldn't kill him in the first 10 years, they definitely wouldn't act rashly in the future. Some people called this the 10-year assessment. Those who had just obtained the world artifact weren't the true world lord. Only through these 10 years could they obtain the true recognition of this world and become the true world lord. But now, Qin Huan had just become a world lord and he was already displaying the world lord's true body. What's going on? Even the heavenly elder, who was experienced and knowledgeable, was completely dumbfounded at this moment. He subconsciously asked this question. However, no one could answer this question for him. World Lord's true body, World Lord's true body. Jiang Huaiming, the sect leader of the Supreme Holy Gate, and the boundary emperors mumbled to themselves as they recalled something at the same time. Before Dong Huangqing, Shi Tianjun, and many other geniuses died, the sound of the great Tao only rang out for 2,990 times. In an instant, The sect leader of the Supreme Holy Gate and the Boundary Emperors felt a chill in their hearts. Qin Huan's position as the World Lord had already broken the rules of tens of thousands of years. This also meant that Qin Huan, the World Lord, was extremely different. Being different from the rest was definitely not a good thing for their enemies. Fellow Taoists, I'm sure you've all realized it, right? The Supreme Holy Gate's Patriarch sucked in a breath of cold air and transmitted a message to Huang Xiaolong. Qin Huan cannot be allowed to live. I have a suggestion. Let's split into 10 groups and search the entire Juxian realm. No matter where Qin Huan is, we must find him. Agreed. 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 The quasi-emperors immediately tore through the void and left. Heavenly Elder, Qin Huan's sector lord position is extremely unusual. It's very likely that he broke some sort of rule and became a unique sector lord. Jiang Huaiming, on the other hand, was completely excited. He transmitted his voice, Heavenly Elder, this matter is of great importance. Please call the other quasi-emperors of the Alcade realm over. My Jiang clan will definitely reward you greatly. Alright. From the attitude of the sect leader of the Supreme Holy Gate and the others, Elder Sky could sense that something was amiss. Although he was puzzled, he didn't ask any questions and nodded his head in agreement. An even greater storm was about to take place in the Juxian realm. At this moment, in a mysterious place in Juxian realm, 2 figures suddenly appeared from the void. Apart from Qin Huan, Jiang Hongxiu was also there. Why did you come with me? Qin Nan was a little surprised. I think it won't be long before the news of me obtaining the exquisite inheritance spreads. I will definitely become a thorn in the side of all the major forces. Rather than being separated, it's better to stay together. This way, it'll be easier to protect. Jiang Hongxiu explained. Then, she frowned and asked, what you used just now was the sector lord real body? If that's the case, I'm afraid it'll cause an even greater disturbance. What do you mean? Qin Nan was stunned. It seems like you don't know about the ability of the sector lord real body. After Jiang Hongxiu's explanation, Qin Nan also frowned. He couldn't help but think of the scene when the boundary weapon took the initiative to recognize him as its master. From the looks of it, this sector lord of his was truly extraordinary. However, Qin Nan wasn't very concerned about this. He quickly closed his eyes and carefully sensed his body. There weren't any changes in his body. His soul was exceptionally calm. The feeling that he was about to leave still didn't appear in his heart. Qin Nan's heart sank. Wasn't the dreamland over? How would the dreamland end? According to his previous deduction, he might possess 2 types of divine bodies. Hence, the dreamland was so powerful. After the connate martial body awakened, the dreamland wouldn't end. Could it be that his deduction wasn't wrong? If that was the case, wouldn't the dreamland only end after he awakened the other type of divine body? If that's the case, Qin Nan's face grew grave. He didn't even know what his other type of divine body was. How could he awaken it? Moreover, how long would it take for him to awaken it? How much time had passed since he returned to the main world? You're a little impatient. Jiang Hongxiu's voice suddenly rang in his ears. Although her tone was cold, it was pleasant to the ears. I noticed earlier that you couldn't wait to leave. Is there a problem now and you can't leave? Chapter 2940. How do you know? Qin Nan was a little surprised. He did not say anything at all. Ever since I broke through to the great success divine body, my senses have become extremely sharp. I can even sense the emotional fluctuations of others. Jiang Hongxiu said lightly, now that you have become a sector lord and your life is not in danger, the only thing that can make you anxious is going back. You are right. Qin Nan sighed softly. My opportunity to go back was to awaken the connate body, but I failed. Later, I thought that I could go back as long as I became a sector lord or after the assembly of immortals. The result is as you see now. If he hadn't told the truth and Jiang Hongxiu couldn't hear it, he really wanted to tell her everything. That way, he would feel less depressed. I see. In other words, the clue to go back has changed. Now, even you don't know what it is. Jiang Hongxiu nodded and said, Then why didn't you choose to let nature take its course? Now that you have become a sector lord, you will definitely have many opportunities to grow quickly. When you go back to the future, it will be very beneficial for your cultivation. You're right, but I still have something important to do. Qin Nan was silent for a while. Then, his eyes became determined again. I have to go back as soon as possible. I have to. Jiang Hongxiu looked at his side profile and quickly retracted her gaze. She looked forward and smiled faintly. If you don't know what the clue is, you can follow the guidance of destiny. Maybe you will find something soon. For example, you can go ahead and take a look. Ahead. Qin Nan was slightly stunned. Then, he remembered that he hadn't observed this place since he came here. He looked up and saw that it was dark all around. Towering trees rose from the ground, but he could only see their silhouettes. He couldn't see their faces. The further he went, the darker it became. In the end, he couldn't see anything. Qin Nan released his powerful senses and immediately found that the ground in front of him had turned into a pitch-black swamp. Wisps of pitch-black aura were trembling above it. It made him feel disgusted. This place. Qin Nan quickly recalled that this was one of the most mysterious forbidden lands in the celestial end world, the immortal devouring land. It was born 800 years ago, and when it was born, it shook the entire celestial end realm. Various great forces joined forces to explore it, but they were attacked midway. When everyone fled, several boundary emperors were severely injured, and dozens of immortal emperors died. Therefore, it was called the Celestial Devouring Land. As far as I know, when the Realm Lord activates his true form, the power of the realms of Juetian will bring him to a safe place. If that was the case, why did he bring the Celestial Devouring Land? If it is safer to put it in such a forbidden area, why not the other 20 or 30 forbidden areas? Jiang Hongxiu said faintly, Back when we were exploring the Celestial Devouring Land, my grandfather was there as well. He and many other quasi-emperors went in very deep. According to him, they were attacked midway, and there was a space-time power inside. You are the successor of the space-time temple, and you came from the future. Then, when the boundary artifact brought you here, does it mean that it is guiding you? When Qin Nan heard this, he could not help but laugh bitterly. If he really came from the future, he would probably think that the boundary artifact was guiding him. Unfortunately, it was not. All of this was an illusion caused by his awakening of the divine body. It was really a coincidence that he came here. You don't believe me? Jiang Hongxiu frowned and said, Could it be that what my grandfather said was false? There is no space-time power inside? As the Realm Lord, you should know, right? No, there is indeed space-time power inside. Qin Nan shook his head and said, But I feel that the boundary artifact will not guide me. To be precise, the Celestial Devouring Land not only had space-time power, but according to the information given by the boundary artifact, there was a terrible catastrophe 800 years ago that caused the rules of heaven and earth in this place to become completely chaotic. There was a large amount of destruction, devouring and dozens of other powers, and the space-time power was only one of them. Of course, the boundary artifact only gave a general information about each mysterious forbidden land. It did not tell Qin Nan what the catastrophe was and why it happened. Your attitude is wrong. Jiang Hongxiu stared at Qin Nan and said seriously, If you are in a hurry to go back, you should try to find any possible clues. The Celestial Devouring Land is very frightening to others, but as the Realm Lord, you should not be affected too much, right? It won't take long, so why not try? Qin Nan looked at her beautiful face that was close to him, and he could not help but feel a strong sense of familiarity. That woman's figure appeared in his mind. After being in a daze for a while, Qin Nan turned his head and sighed. He said, "What you said makes sense. I will go in and take a look." At this point, he could not say anything else. Moreover, the celestial devouring land was mixed with space-time power, which was indeed strange. He might be able to gain something. "Not you, but us," Jiang Hongxiu corrected him and said calmly, "Although I am not as good as you, I have inherited Ling Long's inheritance. I might be able to help at the crucial moment." "All right." Qin Nan did not argue and nodded. He waved his hand and used the power of heaven and earth to create a light boat. It shone brightly in the darkness. Chapter 29:41. The light boat continued forward until it reached a place of complete darkness. Only then did it slow down. It was silent all around. Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu sensed at the same time that they seemed to have lost contact with the Juexian domain and entered a dead space. This was one of the terrors of the celestial devouring land. This place had completely collapsed and there were no rules of heaven and earth. Therefore, regardless of whether it was a quasi-emperor or a celestial lord, they could not absorb divine qi to restore themselves. Even the elixirs they took out would die instantly. Many spells could only be half as powerful as before. Qin Nan activated the Juexian tablet and immediately transferred the power of heaven and earth from other places in the Juexian domain into his body and into Jiang Hongxiu's body. Although this was far from the power of heaven and earth that he could mobilize in other places in the Juexian domain, it was enough to ensure that he and Jiang Hongxiu could display the power of many sector lords. Time passed by slowly. About 4 hours later, just as the Juexian domain was shaking violently, Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu had reached the depths of the swamp. Through the light on the surface, the swamp seemed to be more boiling, like boiling water. However, Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu sensed that destructive, devouring, spacetime and other powers were beginning to appear one after another. Not long after, their numbers suddenly increased by 100 times. They constantly collided and killed each other, erupting waves of terrifying invisible waves. Qin Nan's eyes turned cold. With a thought, he immediately took out the Juexian tablet from his body and placed it on the bow of the light boat. In an instant, the sound of heavy rain could be heard. The Juexian tablet also buzzed and trembled. Qin Nan also saw from the corner of his eye that in the swamp below the boat, pieces of wreckage would appear from time to time. Then they would sink and appear again, repeating the cycle. Back then, the group of experts who had come in to explore must have been attacked here and unfortunately fell. However, Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu did not face this risk. In the Juexian domain, no emperor weapon could compare to the Juexian tablet in terms of defensive power. No invisible waves could shake the Juexian tablet. It was also because of this that when many experts wanted to kill a sector lord, they would often prepare many methods that targeted the sea of consciousness and soul, completely bypassing the boundary artifact. The collisions of the various powers became more and more concentrated. As a result, the formless energy fluctuations that erupted from them also became more and more frightening. The light emitted by the ship of light began to dim. It wasn't that its power was weakening, but that the surrounding darkness was becoming stronger. Moreover, this darkness was also devouring the perception of the cultivators. Jiang Hongxiu flicked her finger and released the exquisite fire, which covered the entire ship. The light immediately became dazzling again, illuminating the surrounding 10,000 feet. There should be a source here. Qin Nan frowned slightly and said, "Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many different kinds of powers." That is indeed the case. Back then, my grandfather and the others also discovered the source. However, when they wanted to explore it, they were attacked. Jiang Hongxiu said, "If you want to go to the source, you should go that way." Since they were already here, they had to go and take a look. Qin Nan immediately changed his direction. At this moment, a red light suddenly flashed in front of them. Before the two of them could react, they heard a deafening roar and the Juexian steel shook. What a fast speed! Qin Nan's heart trembled. Even he couldn't react in time. This speed was at least at the level of a peak immortal emperor, or even comparable to some quasi-emperors. After that, about every 7 to 10 breaths, a red light would flash in front of them and attack their ship of light. This happened more than 100 times. Even though Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu were concentrating and using their eye techniques, they still couldn't see what the red light was. They also didn't know if there was only one red light or many of them. Until the 1000th time, when the red light had just appeared, Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu saw a strange creature stop in front of the Juetian stele. The 16 pairs of eyes of different sizes constantly scanned the Juetian stele, completely ignoring Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu. "What is this? Is it from the Juetian domain?" Jiang Hongxiu asked. "No." As the domain lord, Qin Nan naturally knew all the creatures in the Juetian domain, big and small. However, he had never seen this before. Suddenly, the creature let out a strange squeak. Then, 16 arms of different sizes surged out from its deformed back. Then, they turned into countless afterimages and hammered the Juetian stele, exploding with countless flames, lightning, and other powers. At this moment, in the distant darkness, red lights appeared one after another. Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu quickly discovered that there were exactly 999 red light. They were like lone wolves, quietly watching. Every single streak of red light from before was a creature like this. Although Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu weren't in danger, they still felt a chill in their hearts. No wonder the quasi-emperors were heavily injured and the immortal emperors died. If those people hadn't escaped quickly, even the quasi-emperors would have died. This strange creature tried for a long time. When it realized that it was useless, it let out an angry roar and charged into the darkness. Immediately there were squeaks in the distance as if they were mocking it. However, all the red lights disappeared and the attacks didn't come again. They seemed to have realized that the people who came in this time weren't ordinary, so they chose to give up. Just like that, after another 10 hours, Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu arrived at the source. They saw the outline of a palace in the darkness. As the ship of light approached, Jiang Hongxiu's beautiful eyes suddenly shrank. The Fiend God Association. Chapter 2942. Qin Nan was stunned. He turned his head and asked, "You know about the Mythical Demon Association?" When he had told the Blue Dome Master exactly what Tao Master Huantian had said, the Blue Dome Master was at a loss. He had never heard of it before. "You know about it too?" Jiang Hongxiu was stunned. Her face darkened, and her eyes were filled with disgust. "When I inherited the exquisite Dragon Phoenix Jade, I knew that there was such an inhumane force in the universe. What kind of force is this Mythical Demon Association? I have only heard about it from others." Qin Nan was curious. The existence of the Mythical Demon Association was a headache for Tao Master Huantian. No one knows who created this association, nor when it existed. It is like a shadow in the universe. Ordinary people would never know of its existence. Jiang Hongxiu said coldly, "The purpose of the Mythical Demon Association is to break the shackles of the great Tao of heaven and earth. It is to be able to create divine bodies or innate constitution on its own and allow multiple divine bodies or innate constitution to coexist. In order to achieve this goal, they roam the universe and secretly attack people with divine bodies and innate constitution without attracting the attention of any forces. Then, they use their bodies to refine them. Their methods are extremely clever. It often makes people think that these geniuses have gone mad and were killed for revenge. It is a normal death." Qin Nan was shocked. Allow multiple divine bodies to coexist? If he really had 2 divine bodies, wouldn't he be related to the Mythical Demon Association? However, wasn't the main upper world blocked by the Blue Dome Master alone? How could he be related to the Mythical Demon Association? Could it be that when the Blue Dome Master died, he did something in the main upper world? Or, when Tsang and Zhou Di entered the Blue Dome, Zhou Di discovered something and led him to reincarnate into someone like him. For a moment, Qin Nan's thoughts were in a mess. Qin Nan had always thought that there must be a shocking truth behind all unusual things. It was just like the fact that the boundary artifact had taken the initiative to recognize him as its master. It was most likely related to the boundary artifact's true secret. Jiang Hongxiu did not notice the change in Qin Nan's expression. Her face turned gloomy as she let out a sigh. That senior could have survived the calamity, but he was plotted against by the Celestial Demon Association. They even framed Senior Gu for it, causing Senior Gu to be cursed and suffer a mental breakdown. His lifespan was reduced to 100 years. Qin Nan came back to his senses. When he heard this, he thought of the lone Taoist's previous appearance. He really did not expect that the lone Taoist would bear such pain. He was originally a quasi-emperor and a quasi-emperor of a region. He had a better future, but in the end, he ended up like this. This Celestial Devil Association is indeed despicable, Qin Nan said in a cold voice, and then he said softly, "You don't have to be too sad. The Fiend God Society has long been targeted by some of the true big shots in the myriad of world. They will definitely be destroyed. If others can't destroy the Celestial Devil Association, I will destroy it one day." Jiang Hongxiu calmed down and said faintly, but her killing intent was obvious. Qin Nan did not overthink it. He continued to look ahead. The palace wasn't big, only 3 stories high. It was made of some kind of divine wood, and its surface was covered with claw marks. There were 2 large characters written on the main door, one red and one black, and they looked like eyes. The destructive, devouring, space-time, and other powers gushed out from the top of the palace and scattered in all directions like a spider web. This must be their branch. Back then, they did all kinds of bad things in the Juetian domain. Perhaps the fall of many heavens' prides is related to them. Jiang Hongxiu said. Qin Nan nodded and steered the light boat toward the palace. He waved his right hand and the power of heaven and earth descended. The tightly shut wooden door immediately creaked and opened in 2 directions. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Before Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu could react, they saw chains that looked like they were made of blood lashing at the Juetian steel, as if they were going to shatter it. An extremely strong sense of disgust rose from the bottom of Qin Nan's heart. The Juetian steel immediately let out a buzzing sound and shattered the chains. Qin Nan frowned and steered the light boat into the palace. Swoosh. The candles on both sides of the palace lit up without any fire and emitted golden flames, illuminating the dark palace. Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu immediately saw that there were thousands of jade coffins in the palace. Every coffin was open and some of the coffins were covered in colorful blood. From the looks of it, something must have happened to this mythical fiend association branch. As a result, all the people in the coffins were taken away and this place was completely abandoned. Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu carefully scanned the palace for a while. After they did not discover anything special, they flew up the stairs to the 2nd floor of the palace. As soon as they arrived at the entrance, an incomparably thick and strange smell of blood drifted into their nostrils. Looking up, they saw all kinds of broken limbs and bones scattered on the ground. As if too much time had passed, many of the broken limbs and bones had signs of decay. "There's nothing here. Let's go to the 3rd floor." Jiang Hongxiu's expression was completely calm. She had seen demonic cultivators hunting mortals before, and the scene was much more bloody than this. Therefore, she did not feel uncomfortable. Qin Nan nodded and continued up the stairs. This time, it was different from the previous 2 times. Just by walking up the stairs, the 2 of them immediately felt a faint pressure. Even the Juetian steel at the bow of the ship emitted an even more resplendent light. The lines on the steel appeared in different colors and rippled with the power of heaven and earth. Chapter 2943. Be careful. Qin Nan's expression became slightly more solemn as he sent a message to her through voice transmission. This place was so strange. Even with the Juetian steel, they could not be careless. Jiang Hongxiu glanced at him. She did not say anything. She silently circulated the jeweled divine body. A hazy red light immediately shone from her, making her seem like a fairy that had descended into the mortal world. Very soon, the two of them entered the third floor. The third floor was no different in size from the first floor. When the candles on the walls lit up, Qin Nan and Jiang Hongxiu were finally able to see everything clearly. There were mysterious formations on the ground. However, these formations seemed to have suffered some sort of attack, so every single one of them was damaged beyond repair. They were completely useless now. Apart from that, there were 19 deep red cauldrons that were 15 feet tall and 10 feet wide in the center of the hall. The cauldrons had already been opened, and the power of destruction, devouring, space-time, and so on surged within. The body of the bronze cauldron was engraved with many strange fiend gods. Some were fighting, some were feasting, and some were dancing. Although the scenes were different, every fiend god had the same smile on their face, which made people feel very strange. The source of all of this was the 19 cauldrons. Qin Nan immediately released his powerful senses. Jiang Hongxiu circulated the jeweled divine eye to inspect the cauldrons one by one. Qin Nan first chose the cauldron that gave off the power of spacetime. Through his senses, the cauldron seemed to have formed a space of its own. It was filled with boundless spacetime power. The spacetime scripture in Qin Nan's body was immediately stimulated and began to circulate on its own. However, after 2 circulations, a feeling of extreme disgust rose up in Qin Nan's heart. The spacetime scripture was resisting the spacetime power. It was as if it had been tainted by some unknown existence. It was no longer pure spacetime power. Qin Nan furrowed his brows. He probed carefully for a moment, but he did not sense anything out of the ordinary. If it were not for the spacetime cannon giving off such a reaction, he would have thought that this was a great opportunity for him to absorb and refine this power of spacetime. Following that, Qin Nan shook his head and turned to the next cauldron. Although the power of spacetime in this cauldron was massive, he had already reached the 10th layer of the spacetime cannon. He had yet to obtain the remaining 9 layers, so there was no need for him to waste his time on this cauldron and search for the cause of the resistance. One by one, the bronze cauldrons were explored. The situation inside was exactly the same as the bronze cauldron that contained the power of time and space. They all formed their own space and were filled with boundless power. However, that feeling of resistance didn't appear in Qin Nan's heart any longer. Conversely, Qin Nan even had the conflicting desire to absorb and refine all of them, causing Qin Nan to be unable to help but be slightly shocked and swiftly calm his mind. This is definitely the work of the demonic god association. However, they must have lost control in the end. Even when the demonic god association was about to leave, they didn't want to take them with them. Jiang Hongxiu's voice was slightly cold. Qin Nan nodded in agreement. Very quickly, his power of perception landed on the last bronze cauldron. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat and a feeling of desire surfaced in his heart. What's wrong with you? Jiang Hongxiu noticed his change. This bronze cauldron seems to be a little different. Qin Nan calmed his mind and probed it with his divine thought. There was a mysterious power surging in the cauldron that Qin Nan had never seen before. It seemed to be more overbearing than destruction, but it also had an ethereal feeling of devouring. There was nothing special in the cauldron. It still formed its own space and surged out continuously. Qin Nan couldn't help but shake his head. Just as he was about to withdraw his divine thought, he saw a purple amulet in a corner of the infinite power. The purple amulet wasn't big. It was the size of a palm and it was engraved with mysterious patterns. It seemed to have been attacked by the mysterious power. 2 of its corners were missing and it had lost its luster. Qin Nan's heart trembled violently. At this moment, a feeling of extreme desire rose from his heart. To be more precise, it rose from his soul. Not only that, Qin Nan's pupils rapidly shrank. Just now, he had a thought in his mind. As long as he obtained this purple amulet, this illusion would end. After this thought arose, it was as if he couldn't control it and it became more and more intense. What's going on? Qin Nan was at a loss for a moment. Why would a purple amulet that the divine demon failed to refine make him desire so much that it would end the illusion? According to his previous conjecture, the illusion lasted until now because he had 2 divine bodies. Logically speaking, shouldn't it end when he awakened the other divine body? Is the thing inside useful? Jiang Hongxiu frowned slightly. She also saw the purple amulet just now, but she didn't feel anything. Is it the key to returning you to the future? I'm afraid yes. Qin Nan couldn't help but take a deep breath. Even though it was strange, he couldn't help but feel agitated. After all, to him, ending this illusion was of utmost importance. Without another word, Qin Nan immediately mobilized the power of heaven and earth and formed a huge hand of light that reached into the copper cauldron. The purple amulet, which had been silent all this time, suddenly seemed to be summoned. Before Qin Nan's hand could land, it turned into a purple light and rushed into Qin Nan's body at an astonishing speed. It didn't stop and continued to rush forward. Then, it broke through some mysterious seal and directly entered Qin Nan's soul. Then, it quietly floated between Qin Nan's eyebrows and returned to dead silence. Chapter 2944. Was it coming for his soul? What was the purple amulet? Why was it coming for him? Was it because of his innate martial body? Thoughts flashed through Qin Nan's mind as he tried to activate the purple amulet. However, there was no reaction from the latter. He tried a few more times but it was still the same. Qin Nan could only suppress the doubts in his heart. What he was more concerned about was whether the purple amulet could really get him out of the illusion. Qin Nan retracted his thoughts and looked forward again. This time, a shocking scene appeared. In his line of sight, it was as if a majestic force had descended. The 19 cauldrons, the entire palace, and the flickering candlelight were all slightly distorted. This is... Qin Nan was pleasantly surprised. He sensed it carefully and immediately realized that there was an invisible pulling force descending on his soul. Although the pulling force was still very weak, it was constantly increasing. It would only take a while for the pulling force to reach a certain level and completely take his soul away from Qin Huan's body. However, this seems to be a little different from what I imagined, Qin Nan thought to himself. At first, he thought that when the illusion ended, everything would crack like a mirror and he would return to the major upper world and quickly return to his body. However, this scene seemed to have been summoned back by a majestic being. At this moment, the Realm Lord's seal on Qin Nan's soul suddenly became scorching hot. The Juetian steel floating in front of him shook violently and released a terrifying aura that suppressed the power of the 19 cauldrons. Boom! Qin Nan's soul released a formless vibration. It was the Realm Lord's seal that released a shocking aura that rushed toward the purple amulet. This... Qin Nan was stunned. The Realm Lord's seal sensed that he was about to disappear and was not willing to let him end the illusion. The purple amulet did not move. When the aura came close, it casually released a weak light that neutralized it. The Realm Lord's seal seemed to be unwilling to give up and started to accumulate power again. When Qin Nan reacted, his expression changed. This was within his soul. If they really started fighting, his soul would be severely impacted. If he wasn't careful, he would be severely injured. Once the soul was heavily damaged, it would be extremely difficult to recover. Boundary artifact, this is just an illusion. You don't have to be so stubborn. When the day comes, I'll definitely try and see if I can truly become the realm master of the celestial world. Qin Nan sent out a soul voice. The realm master's seal shook violently twice before gradually calming down, causing Qin Nan to heave a sigh of relief. It seems that you can return to the future. Jiang Hongxiu's voice rang in Qin Nan's ears. Qin Nan opened his eyes and said gratefully, I really have to thank you for this. If it weren't for your persistence, I'm afraid I wouldn't have come here. In the end, I don't know how long I would have been trapped here. Thinking of this, Qin Nan felt a wave of lingering fear. You don't have to be so polite. Jiang Hongxiu said expressionlessly, if you really want to thank me, I'll give you a word of advice. No matter what, don't join the Celestial Demon Association, and don't participate in it. Qin Nan's expression turned serious. He immediately understood what Jiang Hongxiu was worried about. He said, don't worry about that. If I encounter the Celestial Demon Association, I will only be their enemy. I won't join them. That's for the best. If I find out that you've joined the Celestial Demon Association, I'll definitely kill you personally. Jiang Hongxiu said lightly. Qin Nan was about to speak when the Time Blade's voice rang in his mind. Kid, what's wrong with you? Why is your soul emitting such a huge wave? Could it be that he's in danger? Qin Nan immediately replied, Seniors, I didn't encounter any danger. I just found the key to returning to the future. I'm preparing to leave now. The Time Blade fell silent. After a few breaths, it said lightly, Oh, since that's the case, we'll send you off. Qin Nan said to Jiang Hongxiu, Let's go out first. The two seniors will be here later. Okay. Jiang Hongxiu nodded. She waved her hand, and the exquisite fire sprinkled down. It gradually spread throughout the hall. With her cultivation, it went without saying that she would not be able to destroy the palace. Even Qin Nan would not be able to do so with his cultivation, but the exquisite flame that she had left behind served as a warning. Not long after the two left the hall, two terrifying auras rushed out from Qin Nan. The Emperor's body and the Time Blade appeared again. Where is this place? The Emperor's body immediately sensed that this place was strange. After looking around, it said in surprise, Celestial Devouring Land? TSK, you're here. The Time Blade looked around and said, We passed by this place and wanted to explore, but we were delayed by something. I didn't expect this place to be so boring. Luckily, we didn't come here. Why did you leave so early? The Emperor's body looked at Qin Nan and said loudly, According to our agreement, you still have about 2 months. Now that you've become a Realm Lord, you can experience the wonders of a Realm Lord. It will be very beneficial for your future cultivation. Also, if you're interested, I can bring you to see the Qin family's foundation. You should be able to gain a lot there. The Time Blade threw out an even greater temptation. Qin Nan couldn't help but smile bitterly. He said, Seniors, forget it. I had no choice but to bet 3 months. I still have something very important to do on the other side, so I have to leave. Tisk, it's up to you. The Time Blade didn't want to talk to him anymore. All right, since you've made up your mind, we won't force you. The Emperor's body said. This time, you entered Qin Huan's body. Although we were very angry at first, we are very grateful now. We don't have anything good to give you, but we can give you a saber art. This saber art was comprehended by Immortal Emperor Zhu Fa in his later years. There are a total of 7 moves, but Immortal Emperor Zhu Fa refined it for countless years and could only complete 3 moves. It's considered an incomplete saber art. Are you interested? Qin Nan's eyes lit up. I'm interested. Of course, I'm interested. This time, I'll have to thank the 2 seniors. Qin Nan immediately cupped his hands and bowed. He was a saber user. Now that he had a saber art created by an immortal emperor, even if it was incomplete, it was a great opportunity for him. Although it's incomplete, the power of this saber art can be said to be extremely shocking. In terms of power, it's much stronger than the Ju Fa saber art. You're lucky. The time blade shook slightly, and a memory immediately rushed into Qin Nan's sea of consciousness. Chapter 2945. A calm but domineering voice immediately reverberated in Qin Nan's mind. 7 forms of supreme slaying. Slash means to kill. Supremacy means to kill. As the name suggests, this saber technique can kill Dao masters. The short 24 words instantly caused Qin Nan to have goosebumps all over his body, as a chill ran down his spine. Immortal Emperor Ju Fa was so domineering. Not only did he kill an immortal emperor, but he also wanted to create a saber technique to kill Dao masters. Not long after, when Qin Nan calmed down a little, he felt that his blood was boiling. Saber users pressed forward with indomitable will. What's wrong with Dao masters? Can't Dao masters be killed? Slash without fail. Boom. Words immediately rushed into Qin Nan's sea of consciousness. They were the first 3 forms of supreme slaying saber technique. Compared to other emperor techniques, supreme slaying saber technique was extremely simple without any sloppiness. Its so-called general principle was only one sentence: kill a Dao master. Qin Nan suddenly understood why the heaven-defying immortal Emperor Ju Fa only created the first 3 forms. It was very simple. Immortal Emperor Ju Fa deduced that if he wanted to complete supreme slaying saber technique, he would need to add another 4 forms. There were a total of 7 forms. However, Immortal Emperor Ju Fa himself did not believe that he could really kill Dao masters after adding the last 4 forms. If supreme slaying saber technique could not kill Dao masters, could it still be called supreme slaying saber technique? Therefore, it was very likely that Immortal Emperor Ju Fa was not unable to create the complete supreme slaying saber technique, but he did not know if the supreme slaying saber technique in his heart could reach the level he wanted. Of course, there was another possibility. Although Immortal Emperor Ju Fa had outlined the 7 forms of supreme slaying, he understood the true power of Dao masters after fighting with them. Therefore, he could only stop at the first 3 forms. He needed another brand new 4 moves, the kind that could really kill a Dao master after completing them. However, in the end, he reached the end of his life before he could think of it. It's very likely that after learning such a saber art, it will become a kind of inner demon. The 2 seniors are really good at creating difficult problems. Qin Nan couldn't help but smile bitterly. Was he supposed to kill Dao masters in the future? Qin Nan hesitated for a moment and then became firm. It was undeniable that this was a peerless blade technique. As a blade cultivator, he could not refuse, nor could he bear to. A saber wielder would press forward courageously. After Qin Nan completely absorbed the supremacy slaying saber art, he let out a long breath and opened his eyes. What do you think of this saber art? Time Saber smiled faintly. Very good. Qin Nan blurted out without thinking. Huh! The King Body and Time Blade were surprised. They didn't expect Qin Nan to have such a state of mind. I don't have much time left. Qin Nan called out the unconscious Lu Chao and Li Huai from the Juetian steel. He held them gently in the air and said to Jiang Hongxiu, "Please take care of them. When they wake up, please thank them for me." Although everything was an illusion, Qin Nan couldn't bear to wake them up and bid them farewell. Their injuries were too serious. Okay. Jiang Hongxiu nodded. "Seniors, I'll have to trouble you to escort cultivator Hong Xiu out," said Qin Nan. "No problem." The King Body nodded in agreement and held the time blade. It had already sensed the terrifying danger in the immortal devouring land. Even it couldn't agree to it. After Qin Nan saw them disappear, he retracted his gaze. There was still a lot of time left. He planned to comprehend the supremacy-slaying saber art. Suddenly, Jiang Hongxiu's voice rang in his mind. "Have you seen me or heard of me in the future?" Qin Nan was stunned. He thought for a while and said, Taoist Hongxiu, you don't know. I came from a very remote and weak world. Qin Nan's heart skipped a beat. He grinned and said, It's true that I've never seen you before, nor have I heard of you before, but there's a legend in my world. According to it, there was an existence called Immortal Emperor Ling Long in the ancient era who resolved our calamity, but I don't think it was you? Your ability to lie is mediocre, Jiang Hongxiu said with a hint of sarcasm. Qin Nan's face darkened. He did have an idea. He didn't expect Jiang Hongxiu to see through him so quickly. However, the name Immortal Emperor Ling Long is not bad. Although there are many people in the universe who call themselves Immortal Emperor Ling Long, Jiang Hongxiu said. Jiang Hongxiu said, Qin Nan, if I become an immortal emperor, I'll leave some successions in the heavens and realms. If it's fate, you might have the chance to meet me in the future. Remember these incantations. If I'm not dead in the future, you can come and find me. Consider this the second favor I owe you. Qin Nan nodded with a smile and said, All right, I'll thank you in advance, Immortal Emperor Ling Long. When the time comes, I'll surely join you. Goodbye. Jiang Hongxiu's voice fell silent after she finished her sentence. Qin Nan looked at the two words on the door of the palace. He couldn't help but think of the copper mirror. He let out a sigh and immersed himself in the supremacy-slaying saber art. Time gradually passed. The storm in the celestial end realm became more and more terrifying. However, as the culprit, Qin Nan's soul was summoned by a majestic force under the witness of the imperial physique and the time saber. The celestial end steel trembled violently and let out a long cry as if it was unwilling to let go. Finally, Qin Nan left Qin Huan's body. He bowed towards the imperial physique and the time saber. In the blink of an eye, he was sucked into the depths of the world and disappeared without a trace. The two majestic existences were speechless for a long time. Chapter 2946. 2 months had passed since the Donghuang Great Void Chain and the other 6 supreme treasures, in order to weaken the million-year plan set up by the Lord of the Blue Dome, worked together to open up a path that led straight to the upper profound realm of the Blue Dome. In these 2 months, the great upper realm had set off waves of turbulent waves, and earth-shaking changes had taken place. Every moment, experts would be born between heaven and earth. At this moment, at the 9th mountain pass of the Undying Cycle Mountain, a statue-like figure suddenly moved, and the eyes that had been closed all this time slowly opened. This person was Qin Nan. It's been 2 months. Qin Nan glanced around. From the various subtle changes, he had already determined how much time he had spent in the illusion. He couldn't help but feel a sense of relief in his heart. Fortunately, he had come out in time. If he had continued to stay in the illusion for a year or so, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Qin Nan stood up, stretched his arms, and moved his legs. He could not help but feel a sense of familiarity. This made him sigh with emotion. His body was still the best. Qin Nan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and glanced at the many tokens in the storage ring. They were all flashing with different lights, but there was one token that did not have any reaction. This made him feel a lot more at ease. Back when Qin Nan was in seclusion, he had told him that if any crisis occurred, he should send a message to this token so that he could understand the cause of the crisis immediately and go to the rescue as soon as possible. Although he did not know whether Ji Xian and the others were doing well, at least there was no major crisis. Let's master all those powers first. A ray of light flashed in Qin Nan's eyes, and he sat down cross-legged again. He looked inside his body and scanned his soul, and suddenly discovered a shocking scene. The purple talisman was still there, still motionless and unresponsive. Not only that, even the seal of the Realm Lord was still there. What's going on? Qin Nan was shocked. Wasn't it all an illusion? Since it was an illusion, then other than what he had comprehended, nothing else could be brought in. Could it not be an illusion? If it wasn't an illusion, then what was it? Had he traveled through time and space to the celestial Jeweshian realm? No. That was impossible. The Lord of the Blue Dome had long since sent down boundless magic power, cutting off the great upper realm from the myriad world. Even if he was the cause of the abnormality due to the two divine constitutions, it was impossible for him to achieve such a feat. Qin Nan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Then, he tried to activate the purple talisman and the Realm Lord seal. The former didn't move at all, which was similar to how it was in the illusory realm. However, the latter's light soon dimmed and eventually, it turned black. It exuded an illusory aura. Although the Realm Lord's seal still existed, from the looks of it, it should have lost its effect. This made Qin Nan inexplicably relieved. It's definitely still an illusion. But if they still exist, it is very likely that this purple talisman is not simple. My Sector Lord seal is also different from other Sector Lord seals. Qin Nan thought to himself. However, when he thought of this, his expression turned grave. If it was already so complicated, then wouldn't the illusory realm that gave birth to them be even more terrifying? Would the illusory realm caused by the superimposition of two divine constitutions have such power? Whoosh! Forget it! Forget it! Qin Nan slapped his face. Thinking about this now wouldn't do him any good. The current situation was more important. The spacetime cannon. Qin Nan multitasked. First, he activated the spacetime cannon. Then, he incorporated the various comprehensions he had gained from the illusory realm into it. At the same time, he continued to recall the Supremacy Slayer Saber technique and continued to comprehend it. Time passed little by little. The space-time intent emanating from Qin Nan's body became stronger and stronger. If one were to observe carefully, they would see that an unprecedented saber intent was faintly condensing on Qin Nan's body. Although it was still very weak, it wasn't weaker than the spacetime intent at all. Finally, after a day, Qin Nan's cultivation of the spacetime cannon was restored to the 10th level. The spacetime sacred flame was reborn in his body. Qin Nan didn't say anything else. He activated the heaven fighting technique in his body. At the same time, he infused it with the power of spacetime, continuously accumulating power for this invincible technique. Innate martial body, return to my body. Qin Nan didn't delay. Instead, he started to do something more important. His soul trembled and a martial light was immediately released from the depths of his soul. In the blink of an eye, it covered his entire body. Waves of martial intent emanated from it. This made Qin Nan heave a sigh of relief. No matter how strange that illusory realm was, it was fine as long as the innate martial body that he had awakened with great difficulty didn't disappear. Even though the awakening was not as shocking and impassioned as the one in the illusionary realm, the baptism he received was a lot more than the one in the illusionary realm, since it was his actual body. Qin Nan could clearly feel that his internal organs, bones, blood, and so on had all been tempered countless times and broken through their limits again and again. After a few hours, the baptism was completely over. Qin Nan's physical body had become like a precious treasure. His internal organs, bones, blood, and so on were all emitting a divine glow. Qin Nan's physical body had been extremely strong before. After this baptism, the strength of his physical body had reached an extremely terrifying level. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Qin Nan could kill an ordinary supreme heavenly venerate just by relying on his physical body. In addition, the majestic innate force once again filled Qin Nan's body. He could mobilize it at any time. Qin Nan also regained control of the abilities that he had awakened in the illusory realm. Martial realm. Qin Nan circulated the power of his divine body and comprehended the Supremacy Slayer saber art again. In his consciousness, Qin Nan seemed to be holding a light saber in endless darkness. He was brandishing it on his own and slashing out saber chi. He didn't know how long he had comprehended it or how many times he had slashed out. In the end, he slashed out forcefully, splitting the darkness apart. He had completely mastered the first 3 forms of the Supremacy Slayer saber art. Of course, this was only his comprehension. In the future, Qin Nan would have to continuously execute the 3 forms in order to truly unleash their full power. Next, it's time for the Great Assimilation Heavenly Art. Qin Nan's eyes flickered. Chapter 2947. Qin Nan vanished from the 9th mountain pass with a flicker. He reappeared in a desolate land in the first immortal realm. Qin Nan immediately executed the great Tongtian art. He unleashed a force that penetrated the mystical barriers and arrived at the origin force of the primary immortal realm. Compared to the origin energy of the celestial end world, the origin energy of the major upper world was indeed too weak. It was at least 100 times weaker. It didn't give people the feeling of boundless majesty. Qin Nan performed a hand seal and uttered a chant. He smoothly absorbed wisps of origin force into his body. Qin Nan absorbed the origin force at an incredible pace. In less than the period it took an incense stick to burn, Qin Nan was already full. He could no longer absorb any more origin force. The origin force he had absorbed might seem like a lot, but it was only like scooping up a bowl from a lake in the primary immortal realm. Flesh of origin. Qin Nan's body underwent a tremendous change with the thought. The force of the heavens and earth in the surroundings began to move on its own, producing strong gusts of wind. Not bad. Qin Nan nodded. The great Tongtian art was created in the primary immortal realm, and Qin Nan was a cultivator from the primary immortal realm. As such, Qin Nan did not encounter any hindrance when he executed the great Tongtian art in the primary immortal realm. He was able to unleash its full power. Normally, Qin Nan had no reason to absorb the origin force of the primary immortal realm, but Qin Nan still wanted to give it a try. It seemed like the effect was quite impressive. It was a lot stronger than before. Qin Nan did not waste any time. He soon arrived at a desolate land in the mystical realm under the blue dome. He unleashed a few wisps of his aura to intimidate the living beings nearby. They immediately prostrated themselves on the ground and did not dare to make a sound. Qin Nan repeated the same thing. He unleashed a great force once again. He soon saw the origin force of the blue dome. Not only was it weaker than the origin force of the primary immortal realm, it was also emitting a strange aura. Its light was constantly flickering too. It was emitting more than 10 different colors within a single breath. Qin Nan sensed the origin force carefully. He realized that the origin force of the mystical realm was significantly weaker than the primary immortal realm in terms of both quantity and quality. The blue dome was created by the master of the blue dome. It's reasonable that its origin force is weaker than the origin force of the mystical realm. Qin Nan murmured before absorbing the origin force of the immortal realm. This was the first time a problem had occurred during this process. The origin energy of the azure dome trembled violently and erupted with an invisible force. It actually resisted the suction force. It's not up to you. Qin Nan changed his hand seal, and the force of the immortal realm suddenly increased by 5 times. No matter how much the origin force of the blue dome tried to resist, it was still sucked in one strand after another. Very soon, it was filled up again, and Qin Nan withdrew his hand. Qin Nan tried circulating his body of origin and mobilizing the energy of the world. It was the same as when he was in the primary immortal realm. He was like a fish in water. There were no longer any obstructions. Very good. Qin Nan could not help but smile. One of the reasons why he had been in such a hurry to create the second half of the Great Samsara Heavenly Execution was because he had been restricted by many factors when the Master of the Blue Dome had attacked. He had been unable to use his full strength. If Qin Nan had been able to use his full strength back then, it would have been much easier to deal with Song. My battle prowess has reached a new peak as well. Qin Nan sensed the surging energy in his body. He was still in the Tao realm's Supreme Highness realm. Even though Qin Nan had vaguely reached the threshold of the Supreme Highness realm, he clearly did not have the chance to break through in the primary immortal realm. However, if he unleashed his full strength and unleashed the innate martial body, the great samsara heavenly execution, the sacred scripture of spacetime, the heaven battling art, the supremacy slayer saber art, the great evolution sacred mountain, and other arts, it would be a terrifying force. Besides, his main body still had the clear dragon heaven corroborating seal, the undying cycle mountain, the square heaven ancient lantern, the ownerless heaven pattern, and other artifacts. Now that he was no longer restricted in the green dome space, he could constantly channel the boundless power of the world to strengthen himself. He could use the power of the world to activate the clear dragon heaven verifying seal, the undying cycle mountain, and other supreme treasures. Even though Qin Nan could not fully utilize the clear dragon heaven corroborating seal and the square heaven ancient lantern, he could barely unleash their power and unleash a shocking power. It shouldn't be difficult to kill a peak Tao Realm God Emperor. Killing a peak Tao Realm God Emperor. I should have a chance. Qin Nan's eyes flickered. He was slightly disappointed. He had only killed Shi Tianjun, Dong Wangqing, and the other geniuses with the help of the Realm Emperor. It was not his true strength. If he were to stumble into them in his main body, he would have a great fight against them. Forget it, I'll still have a chance when I'm done with the Blue Dome. Qin Nan murmured. Qin Nan frowned all of a sudden. He had just faintly sensed that there were many surging auras surging from all directions. He slightly released his perception power, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. The Blue Dome was different now. Forget it, I shouldn't probe any further. It'll be dangerous if the 7 great artifacts discover me. Qin Nan shook his head and transmitted his voice. Fellow cultivators, I'm back. Chapter 2948. At the 9th mountain pass of the undying cycle mountain, Qin Nan had just used the power of heaven and earth to create a white jade table and chairs when Zhou Xuandao and Cassiopeia flew over from afar. My lord, congratulations on awakening the divine body, Cassiopeia said excitedly. Although Zhou Xuandao did not say anything, he was also relieved. You don't have to be so polite. Qin Nan waved his hand with a smile. Soon, the sound of wind whistling could be heard. Ji Xian, Gu Fei, Heaven Venerable Huang Yun, the heaven-reaching Dao Tree, Progenitor Ling Huang, Progenitor Mingqiu, and Heaven Venerable Chang Shao flew over from the distance. Qin Nan could tell at a glance that they were all will clones and not their actual bodies. They must have been busy and could not make it in time. Haha, little brother, you did well. You only used 2 months to awaken the divine body. I thought you would need at least 3 months. Ji Xian laughed loudly. He had become much more tanned after 2 months of not seeing him. With Brother Nan's talent, why would he need 3 months? Unlike someone who took a few thousand years to awaken the divine body. Gu Fei said sarcastically. Qin Nan, congratulations. Huang Yun, Celestial Tree, and the others cupped their fists at Qin Nan. Their faces were full of smiles, and they were happy from the bottom of their hearts. Everyone, since you are congratulating me, I should congratulate you too. I haven't seen you for 2 months and your cultivation has improved a lot. Qin Nan returned the gesture and said with a smile. Damn, you can tell that our cultivation has improved through our will clones? Ji Xian was shocked. Was the connate martial body so powerful? Why couldn't his divine body do the same? Ji Xian did not expect that Qin Nan had not only awakened the connate martial body. With Qi Nan's current cultivation, not only could he tell the cultivation of the actual body through the will clones, but if the actual body was there, Qi Nan could also tell which part of their cultivation had improved, whether it was because of the treasures, inheritances, or treasures. By the way, where are the princess and the others? Qi Nan asked curiously. Normally, after receiving the news that he had come out of seclusion, even if they couldn't come in person, they would send out their avatars like Ji Xian and the others. Qi Nan, speaking of the three of you, you're really lucky. Emperor Huangyun said softly. After you entered seclusion, they didn't want to be left far behind by you, so they took the initiative to head to the upper profound realm. No matter how we persuaded them, they steeled their hearts to go. He went to the upper profound realm? Qi Nan's expression changed slightly. Don't be angry and don't be anxious. Let me finish. When the three of them went to the upper profound realm, we refined life-saving items for them. Those are talismans that can instantly send them back to the undying cycle mountain. However, in these 2 months, they didn't use a single talisman. Even if they were chased to the brink of death by the Heavenly Emperor Gate several times, they relied on their own wisdom and strength to forcefully resolve the crisis. Emperor Huangyun lamented and said with some heartache, in just 2 months, they have already grown to become Tao Realm Heavenly Sovereigns. Moreover, a few days ago, each of them received the inheritance of a boundary emperor. Now they are receiving the inheritance and will need some time before they can come out of seclusion. Qi Nan couldn't help but fall silent when he heard this. To be honest, he was a little selfish. He didn't want Princess Miao Miao, Jiang Bailan, Xue Meng Yao and the others to take the risk. Especially in the upper profound realm, where the 7 great treasures were, it was incomparably dangerous. However, he could understand their thoughts. If he thought about it from another perspective, Princess Miao Miao, Jiang Bailan, and Xue Meng Yao were all incomparably powerful, and his cultivation was lower. In order to prevent being harmed by the enemy, would he be willing to stay in the undying cycle mountain and be protected by them? There was no way he was willing to accept it. Besides, each of them was no ordinary woman. They had their own pride. Qi Nan pondered for a moment and made up his mind. He wouldn't stop them. However, he had to leave behind a sufficiently powerful technique in their sea of consciousness. He would only be able to endanger their lives if he killed them. Wait! Qi Nan suddenly realized something. His face was filled with astonishment as he said, "What did you just say? The succession of a boundary emperor?" A boundary emperor was also known as a half-immortal monarch. In the heavenly upper realms like the light-shaking realm and the celestial end realm, the boundary emperor could be considered the strongest authorities. Once the succession of such an authority was discovered, it would attract many immortal dominators, immortal emperors, and geniuses to fight for it. Some of the thick-skinned boundary emperors might even make a move secretly. It was obvious how valuable the succession of a boundary emperor was. A boundary emperor's succession had appeared in the Blue Dome? Besides, judging from Emperor Huangyun's words, did it mean that each of them had obtained a boundary emperor's succession? A total of 3 boundary emperors had appeared? Brother, the succession that appeared after the Blue Dome's upper profound realm was revealed has greatly exceeded our expectations. Don't think you're unbeatable just because you've awakened the innate martial flesh. Ji Xian straightened his face. That's right. It can be said that the great upper realm has undergone tremendous changes in the past 2 months. Minchu progenitor interrupted. You might not know this, but a total of 20 boundary emperor successions have appeared in the upper profound realm. 139 immortal dominators' successions. 756 immortal emperors' successions. There are countless immortal dominator and emperor god successions, and they can be found anywhere. Besides, these are only the successions. According to our investigation, there are at least 7,800 of them in the Blue Dome's upper profound realm, and the number is only a little. Among them, there are 36 boundary monarch weapons and over 100 immortal dominator weapons. As for the natural resources and places that can improve one's cultivation and help one comprehend, there are even more of them. Chapter 2949. Qin Nan never thought that so many inheritances would appear in just 2 months after the 7 great treasures opened the Blue Dome. Such a number, such a scale, could be said to be terrifying. It was no exaggeration to say that if the Alcade world, Juetian world, and other great worlds knew about the existence of the upper profound realm, all the big forces, small forces, and rogue cultivators would go crazy and fight for it at all costs. These inheritances and opportunities were enough to trigger a great war. More importantly, the Blue Dome upper profound realm had only been open for 2 months. If this continued, how many inheritances and opportunities would appear? How many treasures would appear? Thinking of this, Qin Nan could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Shocking, right? Celestial Tree smiled bitterly. To be honest, during these 2 months I've been completely numb. Originally, I thought that a divine emperor was very strong, but then a celestial king appeared. I thought that a celestial king was very strong, but then a celestial emperor appeared, and then a boundary emperor. My worldview is constantly being shattered and overturned. Senior Tongtian, I feel the same as you, and now that I think about it, I feel like I'm dreaming. Ancestor Mingqiu said self-deprecatingly, I'm afraid that if I suddenly wake up, everything will be an illusion. What's there to be emotional about? I think this is pretty good. This proves that we still have a lot of room for improvement. Gu Fei muttered. Speaking of this, there's another big thing to tell you. Ancestor Ling Huang said seriously. Not long after you went into seclusion, Song established a force called the Heavenly Emperor Gate. Qin Nan calmed down. This was within his expectations, so he asked, Is the Heavenly Emperor Gate very powerful now? Very powerful, very powerful. Ancestor Ling Huang sighed. When the 7 great treasures opened the path to the upper profound realm, although the great upper world was excited, many people were still hesitant. At that time, Song seized the opportunity to stand up and tell the world that as long as they joined the Heavenly Emperor Gate, they would immediately know the location of various inheritances and opportunities, and also know the real way to obtain them. So, a group of people joined the Heavenly Emperor Gate, and then under Tsong's guidance, everyone received the inheritances and their cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. The most exaggerated one of them broke through from the Master Realm to the Peak Ruler Realm in 3 days, and was about to become a heavenly venerable one. The entire primary upper world went into a frenzy when the news spread. Countless people joined the Heavenly Emperor sect, and countless cultivators flocked to the Azure Sky Lord. Even if we used all our means and tried our best to persuade them, we still couldn't stop them. Qin Nan could not help but shake his head. The 7 great treasures clearly wanted to use the cultivators of the great upper realm to weaken the restraints of the Blue Dome Lord's million-year plan. As long as the cultivators of the great upper realm listened to them and were united against a common enemy, Song would definitely lose his cool after delaying for several dozen days. There was no need to join the Heavenly Emperor Gate. Song would take the initiative to inform them. However, that was how the human heart was. They could not sit still when they saw someone else had taken the initiative. In just 2 months, Song's Heavenly Emperor Gate has more than 10,000 Masters of Tao, 1,000 Rulers of Tao, and more than 200 Heaven Highnesses. Besides, there are more than 100 peak Heaven Highnesses among them. Most of them are Earth-knowing and Heaven-responding Heaven Highnesses. Each of them is quite outstanding. Progenitor Ling Huang exclaimed. On top of that, there are now more than 300 Heaven Highnesses in the great upper world. There are almost 2,000 rulers of Tao. That many? Qin Nan received a great shock once again, leaving him with a great shock. When he was in seclusion, There were only a dozen Heaven Highnesses and a few dozen rulers of Tao in the great upper world. As for the masters of Tao, there were only a few hundred of them. TSK, the great upper world's martial arts has reached an unprecedented level in just 2 months. It has surpassed the development of the great upper world over the past few thousand years. Ji Xian shook his head and exclaimed. As someone who had lived in the great upper world since the ancient times, he had witnessed the development of the great upper world. However, he had no idea how to describe the changes that had taken place in the past 2 months. He could only say that the era had gone completely crazy. This kind of madness, no one could stop it. The Celestial Tree, Heaven Highness Huangyun, and the others were having mixed feelings too. They had cultivated for more than 10,000 years. They had only achieved the Master Realm and the Ruler Realm after countless trials and tribulations. But now? Many cultivators whom they had never heard of had suddenly obtained some kind of succession or artifact, allowing their cultivation to improve rapidly. They had broken through the Master Realm, the Ruler Realm, and the Heaven Highness Realm. Most terrifyingly, their foundations were not unstable after the breakthroughs. Instead, their strength had greatly surpassed their cultivation in the past. Of course, everyone was going crazy. They were also growing. Compared to 2 months ago, their strength had undergone earth-shattering changes. They had grown tremendously. That doesn't make sense. Even if there are so many successions in the upper profound realm, there shouldn't be so many cultivators in the great upper realm who are qualified to enter the upper profound realm. Qin Nan blurted out. Before the others could explain, Qin Nan realized something. It was true that only a few hundred cultivators were qualified to enter the upper profound realm, but the 7 great artifacts were trying to weaken the influence of the plan that had taken 1,000,000 years to come. As such, the 7 great artifacts were trying to improve the overall strength of the cultivators in the great upper realm. The simplest way was to use the lower profound realm and the middle profound realm to reveal the successions and successions in the upper profound realm so the people could compete for them. Chapter 2950. It's just a pity. Qin Nan couldn't help but sigh softly in his heart. It had to be said that the Blue Dome Master's idea back then was good. He had formulated a plan for 1,000,000 years and planned everything for the great upper realm. If the Blue Dome Master's idea had continued to develop, the great upper realm would have gone through continuous evolution, and more powerful cultivators would have been born in the great upper realm. After 1,000,000 years, it would be normal for a quasi-emperor to appear. It was just a pity that the 7 great treasures rebelled midway, completely destroying the Blue Dome Master's painstaking efforts. On the surface, these inheritances and opportunities seemed to have been obtained by the people of the great upper realm, and seemed to be no different from the original intention of the Blue Dome Master. However, after Qin Nan became the Realm Master in the illusion this time, he discovered that the strength of a realm was closely related to the living beings in this realm. As more and more experts appeared in this realm would also become more and more prosperous and powerful. However, there was a very important point in this, and that was that all of this needed to be changed step by step. The 7 great treasures method was like pulling up seedlings, abruptly raising these cultivators to a height that the great upper realm couldn't keep up at all. By the way, what about Huang Fu Ju and the Eternal Night sect? What's their attitude now? Qin Nan suddenly thought of something. Back then, Ji Xian and the others had split into 2 groups. One group secretly went to the upper profound realm to set up in advance, while the other group went to beat Huang Fu Ju and the Eternal Night sect master. In this crazy era, although Huang Fu Ju's Demon Bodhi sect and the Eternal Night sect master's Eternal Night sect are not as large as the Heavenly Emperor Gate, they have gathered dozens of heavenly venerables under their command. Celestial Tree first pointed out their situation, and frowned slightly. Huang Fu Ju's attitude is very clear, he has always been on neither side. but the Eternal Night sect is a little strange. A month ago, the Eternal Night sect had many conflicts with the Heavenly Emperor Gate, and the Eternal Night sect master had repeatedly said that he was not afraid of Tsang at all. But some time ago, the Eternal Night cult suddenly changed their direction and cooperated with the Heavenly Emperor Gate time and time again. Originally, the Eternal Night sect's attitude towards us was to keep a respectful distance from us. However, from then on, they even joined hands with the Heavenly Emperor Gate several times to target the people of our alliance. Qin Nan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Ever since becoming a supreme heavenly venerable, the Eternal Night cult master's temperament had changed drastically. He was no longer a coward and was much bolder and more domineering. But what method did Tsang use to change the Eternal Night sect master's attitude? Logically speaking, the Eternal Night cult master should learn from Huang Fuju. Both sides could cooperate in secret, but they would not help each other. That would maximize the benefit. It seems that Tsang has given him an extremely shocking benefit. The Eternal Night hierarch couldn't refuse at all. Qin Nan said indifferently. We think so too, and it's very likely that it's the Immortal Emperor's inheritance that's about to appear. The Celestial Tree said. Immortal Emperor's legacy? Qin Nan was shocked again. The Immortal Emperor's inheritance is about to appear in the upper profound realm? Yes, according to Brother Tian's calculations, the Immortal Emperor's inheritance will appear in a period of time. I'm afraid Tsang used this as a reason to get the Eternal Night cult master's attitude. Ji Xian said seriously, speaking of this, just a few days ago, the Heavenly Emperor Gate, the Eternal Night cult, and the Demon Bodhi sect announced to the world that they are going to reopen the Mountain of Origin. Qin Nan reacted, and a divine light flashed in his eyes. Now that there were hundreds of peak heavenly venerables in the great upper realm, plus the big scene in the upper profound realm, it was not difficult to reopen the Mountain of Origin. However, Tsang's purpose was very simple. First, there were many supreme heavenly venerables in the Heavenly Emperor Gate, so that they could shake off Qin Nan's alliance in terms of top combat strength. Although the current era was completely crazy, there were still only a few supreme heavenly venerables. Second, it was for the Immortal Emperor's inheritance. Even if Tsang had the 7 supreme treasures to guide him, he did not have much confidence in obtaining such an inheritance. He had to gather a group of experts. Third, it was even simpler. It was for the Chaos Palace. The 7 supreme treasures were treasures left behind by the Lord of the Blue Dome. They were also opportunities for the cultivators of the great upper realm. They would definitely be restricted in the Chaos Palace. On the contrary, the supreme heavenly venerables were like the descendants of the Lord of the Blue Dome. The restrictions in the Chaos Palace would definitely be much smaller, and they might even have a lot of help. It seems that we have to be the bad guys for once. Qin Nan smiled faintly. Although there were many heavenly venerables in their alliance, the gap between them and the Heavenly Emperor Gate was too big. They definitely could not let the other party reopen the Mountain of Origin. At that time, their alliance would be the main culprit that hindered the world's development. That's right. Ji Xian revealed traces of murderous intent. In the past few days, we have been gathering the strength of the entire alliance. We have been secretly plotting for a long time, and are ready to launch a war against the Heavenly Emperor Gate. Hee, that's great. I've long disliked that group of people. Gu Fei rubbed his fists and said, It seems that I've returned at the right time. Qin Nan's smile widened. He had gained so much in the illusory realm this time, and it was just the right time to try it out. However, just as this thought surfaced, he heard the Celestial Tree say gently, Qin Nan, you don't have to participate in this matter. If you go to the upper profound realm, you will definitely attract the attention of the 7 supreme treasures. They might even kill you. Moreover, we have also left you a quasi-emperor's inheritance. You can refine and absorb it during this period of time, and try your best to raise your battle strength to a higher level. You left me a quasi-emperor's inheritance? Qin Nan was a little stunned. Chapter 29:51. How is it? Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Ji Xian smiled and said, "This is the first Boundary Emperor's inheritance that appeared in the upper profound realm. We put in a lot of effort to get it back then." Gu Fei snorted and said, "What effort did you put in? Didn't you just use a few bamboo sticks to calculate? Didn't you rely on me and the other seniors to charge and break through the enemy lines? What do you know? If I didn't calculate, would you have found the location?" Ji Xian's face darkened. "Come on, there was already an immortal light flickering before we even got there. Everyone was attracted over, so there was no need for you to calculate at all," Gu Fei said disdainfully. The two bickered at the side. Celestial Tree, Huangyun Tianzuan, Ancestor Ling Huang, and Ancestor Mingqiu did not say anything, but their eyes were filled with gentleness when they looked at Qin Nan. There was even a slight smile on their faces. It was as if the elders in the family were treating the younger generation, even though the younger generation's cultivation and combat strength had long surpassed them. Qin Nan could not help but feel warm in his heart. He really did not expect that everyone would prepare such a big gift for him. Although Ji Xian said it casually, Qin Nan did not need to think to know that it was not easy to fight for this Boundary Emperor's inheritance back then. It was extremely difficult and there was even a risk of death. More importantly, this was the first Boundary Emperor's inheritance in the upper profound realm. At that time, no one could guarantee that a second Boundary Emperor's inheritance would appear in the upper profound realm. Simply put, they all wanted to leave the best inheritance to him. "Seniors, this junior thanks all of you." Qin Nan calmed down and bowed. Then, he shook his head and said, "However, I don't need this Boundary Emperor's inheritance. See, what did I say earlier? I said that with this kid's character, he would definitely not accept it so easily. You guys actually didn't believe me." Ancestor Mingqiu was not surprised at all. Instead, he smiled proudly. Celestial Tree and the others looked helpless. Ancestor Ling Huang sighed and said unhappily, "Qin Nan, why are you still being so courteous with us at this time? Don't feel burdened. We took this Boundary Emperor's inheritance for you in the hope that you can continue to defeat Song in the Chaos Palace." Zhou Xuandao stroked his beard and said, "That's right, don't reject it now. If you really feel bad, you can find more inheritances and opportunities later." Gu Fei also said, "Brother Nan, of course, don't be like an old woman's." Qin Nan did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard their words. He waved his hand and said, "You all misunderstood. I'm not being courteous with you. This Boundary Emperor's inheritance is meaningless to me. I gained a lot in the process of awakening my innate martial body. It's not as simple as having a divine body." Before he could finish, Ji Xian interrupted him with a sneer and said, "Little brother, it seems that you still don't understand what kind of realm a Boundary Emperor is and what it means. No matter what you gained in the process of awakening your divine body, it's far from being comparable to a Boundary Emperor's inheritance." He was also someone who had awakened a divine body. He knew very well how much a divine body could increase one's battle strength. Even if the innate martial body was stronger than his heavenly treasure divine body, it was still a divine body and not one of the 10 great innate martial bodies. Ji Xian thought Qin Nan was going to reject him when he saw Qin Nan was about to say something. He added, "Little brother, I'll be honest with you. You almost crushed Song and the others at the Mountain of Origin. If they didn't rely on the 7 great artifacts, you would have killed them by now. But times have changed. According to our investigation, Song has obtained at least 2 Boundary Emperor's successions. It's very likely that the 7 great artifacts have given him great benefits too. If you were to fight Song now, you might not stand a chance against him. Even Yongyi has obtained a Boundary Emperor's succession. He might still be able to defeat you, but he might be able to keep you busy." The Celestial Tree, Huangyun Heaven Highness, and the others nodded. They had learned a lot over the past 2 months. One of the main reasons why the primary upper realm was so crazy was that some masters of Tao could easily defeat rulers of Tao, and rulers of Tao could defeat Heaven Highnesses with ease after obtaining the successions of God Emperors. The strength of a cultivator was greatly influenced by the succession they obtained. Qin Nan was left speechless. It turned out that they were only trying to secure the successions of Boundary Emperors because they were worried that he would not be able to keep up with the times. What was the Boundary Emperor realm? What was the significance of a Boundary Emperor's succession? He was well aware of it. Besides, he was once chased by a few dozen Boundary Emperors. "Ji Xian, can you stop interrupting me? Let me finish," Qin Nan said grumpily. "All right, go ahead." Ji Xian nodded. "Those who have awakened the innate martial flesh will have to enter an illusion. My illusion isn't ordinary. I've obtained the succession of an immortal emperor." Qin Nan took a deep breath and said, "Therefore, my strength has improved tremendously compared to 2 months ago. I believe I won't have any problem defeating Tsang." As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. The succession of an immortal emperor? Ji Xian quickly collected his thoughts. He said with a confused look, "You've only awakened the god flesh. How did you obtain the succession of an immortal emperor?" Chapter 2952. Among the people present, only Ji Xian knew that Qin Nan had to enter the illusion to awaken the innate martial flesh. He had to complete some kind of quest to awaken the innate martial flesh. However, how could he possibly find the succession of an immortal emperor in the illusion? They were both immortal emperors. Even if there was a difference between their immortal emperors, it shouldn't be that huge, right? In addition to Ji Xian, even though the others did not say a word, Qin Nan could tell that they did not believe him when he saw their expressions. "If you don't believe me, why don't I prove it to you?" Qin Nan said straightforwardly. It was meaningless to waste his breath. The crowd was slightly convinced after hearing his word. Based on their understanding of Qin Nan, there was no need for him to keep up the act since he had already put it this way. Qin Nan was not the kind of person to waste time. However, no matter how they thought about it, they still felt like they were dreaming. "Great!" Gu Fei's eyes lit up when he thought of something. "My main body hurried over as soon as I received Brother Nan's message. We're not far from the Undying Cycle Mountain now. Why don't I test Brother Nan's strength?" "That's a great suggestion." Celestial Tree nodded. Great, I've heard you bragging about how powerful the succession you've obtained is. Why don't you show us your strength today?" Minchu Progenitor said. "Don't worry, I won't let you down. Speaking of which, Brother Nan, you're a Tao and Supreme Highness, while I'm only a Tao and Supreme Highness. If you want to prove your strength, you should suppress your cultivation to the Tao and Supreme Highness realm." Gu Fei blurted out. Even if he had obtained the succession of the Boundary Monarch, he was still no match for Qin Nan. However, there was still a difference between a satisfying defeat and a humiliating one. He would like to have a satisfying defeat, thus he would use all kinds of tricks he had. Of course. Qin Nan smiled. A glamorous figure suddenly appeared in Qin Nan's mind when he saw Gu Fei disappearing. He frowned and said, "Copper Mirror, did Empress Feiyue show up in the past 2 months?" He also tried to contact Empress Feiyue's badge with his divine sense, but she did not respond. She did not send a clone of her will either. "You mean her?" Ji Xian said, "Don't worry. She met Brother Tian 2 months ago. She seems to have found a great inheritance that is very suitable for her. She should still be in seclusion now. When the Primal Chaos Palace opens, she should appear." Great inheritance? Qin Nan heaved a sigh of relief. As long as she was safe, everything was fine. Not long after, Gu Fei's true body arrived at the 9th level of the mountain. Compared to 2 months ago, his human form had grown a lot taller and more muscular. Just by standing there, he gave off a sense of oppression. Qin Nan glanced at Gu Fei and immediately noticed a savage aura inside his body. It seemed like not only was the succession that Gu Fei had obtained very powerful, it happened to belong to the beast tribe too, thus it was very suitable for him. The crowd spread out and landed in the distance. Mingqiu progenitor took out a teapot and a table to brew some tea. His eyes flickered with anticipation. If Qin Nan was telling the truth, how strong was Qin Nan now? Qin Nan withheld his cultivation and said, "Bring it on. Brother Nan, I've obtained the succession of the mythical dragon emperor in the upper profound realm. Not only does it not conflict with the bloodline of our tribe, it has also given me a lot of benefits." Gu Fei performed a hand seal. A ferocious aura burst out from his body. Mythical dragon real body. Gu Fei growled. Illusory purple-gold dragon scales immediately appeared on his body. A faintly discernible dragon head appeared above Gu Fei's head, and an illusory dragon tail appeared behind him. Boom! A majestic beast aura was released from Gu Fei's body. It surged out in all directions like a raging tide. He's really powerful. Mingqiu progenitor drank the tea in his cup in one gulp and looked solemn. He had also obtained the Celestial Emperor's inheritance and had become an ultimate Tao realm heavenly venerate. However, Gu Fei's move alone was enough for him to use all his strength to deal with him. Celestial Tree and Heavenly Venerate Huang Yun nodded. Gu Fei's current aura was comparable to that of a supreme Heavenly Venerate who had just been born 2 months ago. "Brother Nan, I'm coming." Gu Fei spoke again. His voice was like thunder and sounded like a real dragon. 1,000 demon god-slaying skill. Several enormous illusionary figures appeared behind Gu Fei. Each of them was emitting a shocking beast aura. The illusionary figure of the mythical dragon at the top uttered a dragon roar. It immediately commanded the other illusionary figures to gather together and turn them into a brilliant ray of light. The rift in the surroundings began to vibrate vigorously. "He's defeated me." Mingqiu progenitor let out a sigh. "He's defeated us too." Progenitor Ling Huang and Supreme Chang Shao spoke too. They could feel that this move contained an incomparably domineering will. If their true bodies were here, they might be able to block it by using their respective immortal emperor inheritances. However, they would still suffer a great impact and would most likely be seriously injured. No wonder the kid dares to talk back to me. Ji Xian squinted. He could tell that Gu Fei had yet to fully utilize the move. Chapter 2953. Qin Nan was relieved upon seeing this. Gu Fei was indeed unable to fully utilize the power of the move, but it was only because of the limitations of his cultivation. Gu Fei was able to execute the move not only because it was powerful to begin with, but because Gu Fei had spent a lot of effort to comprehend and practice it. Qin Nan summoned a saber in front of him with a thought. It was the heaven-shattering saber. The heaven-shattering saber was still a part of his body, but now that he had taken it out, he no longer needed to sever his arm. The origin force in his body would automatically replenish the lost arm. Even though the heaven-shattering saber was not sentient, it was quite intelligent. It immediately let out a pleasant cry when it sensed the changes to its master. In terms of material quality, the heaven-shattering saber was no longer comparable to his. However, the heaven-shattering saber was the most suitable weapon for him. Bang! Gu Fei moved. The space where he had been standing was directly shaken into a huge crater. His body seemed to have turned into a real dragon as he burst forth with astonishing speed. How quick! Ancestor Mingqiu and the Heaven Highnesses were astounded once again. In the nick of time, Qin Nan grabbed the heaven-shattering saber. Bang! A shocking scene appeared. Heaven and earth in all directions suddenly changed color. The sky turned dark and the earth trembled violently. It felt like a great calamity was about to descend upon the place. Wisps of formidable pressure were surging at the place before it even arrived. This! Ancestor Mingqiu and the others were startled. As Tao Realm Heaven Highnesses, they felt extremely heavy, as if their bodies were being crushed by enormous mountains. They would have to use 60 to 70% of their strength just to lift a finger. The eyes of Ji Xian, Celestial Tree, and Heaven Highness Huangyun widened too. Their reaction was not as exaggerated, but they still felt a great pressure. On top of that, Gu Fei, who was fighting against Qin Nan, was under even greater pressure. It was as if several mountains were crashing down on him from the sky, suppressing him in the air. Most terrifyingly, a voice appeared in his mind. The world was about to collapse. Everything in the world was about to be buried. He had to run for his life. Otherwise, he would be buried too. Gu Fei, what do you think? Can you still make it? Qin Nan said calmly. He slowly raised his arm and swung the saber. The changes of the world, the surging pressure, and the will surging skyrocketed too. Gu Fei struggled vigorously in the air while uttering a few groans. However, no matter what he did, even when his face turned red and veins surfaced on his forehead, he could not move another zhang away. So what if the world is about to collapse? Break it! Gu Fei roared at the sky, and the dragon's shadow on his body shone even brighter. With brute force Qin Nan's, with the Tao to Nan's Qin Nan's, Qin's to Qin Nan's will. With Qin Nan's Qin Nan. Qin Nan immediately slashed forward with his saber. At that moment, Ji Xian, Celestial Tree, and Empyrean Huangyun's expressions changed drastically as their hair stood on end. Ancestor Mingqiu, Ancestor Ling Huang, and the rest turned pale. Fear rose uncontrollably from their hearts. Everything around them lost their luster. It was as if the sky had collapsed, the earth had collapsed, and all living things no longer existed. Qin Nan retracted his saber in time. Everything returned to normal. Gu Fei's body fell from mid-air and crashed onto the ground, panting heavily. Ancestor Mingqiu and the rest were not in a good state either. Their breathing was rapid, their chests heaving, and their bodies were soaked in sweat. In that instant, it was as if they had been reborn from death. Although Ji Xian, Celestial Tree, and Empyrean Huangyun's expressions did not change much, if one observed carefully, they would notice that their palms were trembling slightly. The surroundings were silent. Qin Nan did not say anything. This was his first time using the Supremacy Slayer saber technique. The first move, Heaven Decimating Earth. Although he did not completely execute it, he had gained quite a bit of insight. F***CK. After several breaths of time, Ji Xian squeezed out a word from his mouth. That saber move that Qin Nan slashed out just now caused a huge chill to explode in his heart. He could block it, but he would probably have to use most of his strength. Worthy of being an immortal emperor's inheritance. Celestial Tree and Empyrean Huangyun could not help exclaiming. Their feelings in their hearts were similar to Ji Xian's. This brat! Ancestor Mingqiu and the rest exchanged a glance and laughed bitterly in unison. To be honest, their current hearts were really a little complicated. Qin Nan obtained the immortal emperor's inheritance, and his strength advanced by leaps and bounds. They should be happy. But why did it feel like they did not help at all? Qin Nan, that saber move just now was your strongest saber move? Celestial Tree calmed down and opened his mouth to ask. Not really, there are still 2 more moves at the back. Qin Nan shook his head. Celestial Tree was silent. If he had known earlier, he would not have calmed his emotions just now. Did you really obtain this when you awakened the divine physique? Ji Xian still did not give up and asked. Come on, old Ji, don't ask anymore. Is Brother Nan's Xiantian martial physique the same as your heavenly treasure divine physique? Gu Fei recovered some strength and jumped up from the ground. His face did not look like he had suffered a blow at all. Instead, he was in high spirits. He had also gained a lot just now. Chapter 29:54. Speaking of which, I happen to have something to tell you. In the process of awakening my divine body, I entered an illusory realm and met the young Blue Dome Master. Qin Nan said, "Blue Dome Master?" Everyone present was shocked, and many thoughts immediately emerged in their mind. It's a pity that it was an illusory realm. Even if I tell the Blue Dome Master about the future, he can't help us. Qin Nan first dispelled their thoughts, and then said, however, he used a little time to create a minor chaos technique. I'll pass it to you later. When you enter the Chaos Palace, it should be useful. Qin Nan looked at Ji Xian again. Tell Brother Tian about this. The spirit of the celestial pole list was still hidden in the dark. He had faked his death for 10,000 years, and would never show himself unless it was a critical moment. This time, Ji Xian and the others went to the upper profound realm to set up various means. The spirit of the celestial pole list had only separated a consciousness clone, and then completed it with the help of the vast dragon heaven verifying seal and the ancient square dragon lamp. In this way, the weight on our side has increased by a lot. Ji Xian nodded and made up his mind to ask Brother Tian if his celestial treasure divine body had not fully awakened yet. Fellow Taoists, since Qin Nan can't use this quasi-emperor inheritance, why don't we find some time to comprehend it together? The celestial tree suggested. That's great. I've long been drooling over this quasi-emperor inheritance. No one had any objections. Indeed, other than Qin Nan, anyone else would have a grudge against it. It was best to comprehend it together. In that case, let's stop chatting. Qin Nan, you go into seclusion and cultivate. We'll go and stop the Heavenly Emperor Gate from reopening Mountain Origin. Ji Xian said. Wait, didn't we say we'll go together? Qin Nan said helplessly, although my original body can't enter the upper profound realm, I can send a clone. Clone? Emperor Huangyan said doubtfully, there's no need for that, right? Although you are powerful, your doppelganger is usually unable to unleash even a tenth of your original self's strength. That's under normal circumstances. The doppelganger I condense can unleash 1/5 of my original body's battle prowess. Qin Nan said. Under normal circumstances, just as Emperor Huang Yun had said, the avatar would not be able to unleash even a tenth of its power. Even if it was supplemented with many heavenly treasures, it would still only be able to unleash a tenth of its power. However, Qin Nan could use source power to create doppelgangers. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Nan's current cultivation was relatively low and could only absorb a certain amount of origin energy, the origin avatar he created would probably be able to use a third of its battle prowess. 1/5? Everyone's eyes lit up. A fifth of Qin Nan's original body was an extremely shocking battle prowess. It would not have any problem dealing with an existence of Gu phase level. Moreover, even if his doppelganger was killed, it would not affect Qin Nan. Alright then. Celestial Tree quickly reacted and said, let me briefly explain the general situation to you. According to our previous discussion, we have agreed to split into 3 paths. The first path is the original location of the Mountain of Origin. There is a ready-made Mountain of Origin there, so the possibility of Tsang choosing to open it there is very high. Second, Tsang will definitely guess that we will definitely go and stop it, so we think that Tsang will choose to build a new Mountain of Origin in the upper profound realms God's blessed land. After all, the current situation is different from the ancient times. There are already hundreds of Empyreans in the myriad heavens, and there are so many strange creatures in the upper profound realm. It is very easy to create a big scene. Third, building a Mountain of Origin in the upper profound realm is very likely to cause many bad changes. Tsang might consider this point and choose to build one in another God's blessed land in the middle profound realm. These three paths, in comparison, the first and third paths are more likely, while the second path is slightly less likely. Therefore, Huang Yun and I will go to the first path, Ji Xian will go to the third path, and Gu Fei and the rest will go to the second path. Qin Nan couldn't help but praise in his heart. Everyone had considered everything, but the only flaw was that after splitting into three paths, the battle strength that their alliance could unleash would be greatly reduced. At that time, it would be quite difficult to stop the other party. How about this, Senior Tong Tian and Old Ji? I will send a clone to follow you. My clone is now in the Blue Dome, maybe it can play some unexpected role. Qin Nan thought for a moment and said, as for my other clones, send them all to the second path. Celestial Tree and the others looked at each other and said, that's good. Finally, everyone must remember that this mountain of origin doesn't have to be destroyed. When the other party makes a move, they must have thought about how to guard against us, so do everything according to your ability. Qin Nan sat with his legs crossed and continued to comprehend the 7 forms of the Supremacy Slayer. The rest of the clones disappeared from the mountain of origin. Not long after, Qin Nan's origin clone followed Gu Fei and the others to the Blue Dome again. Qin Nan suddenly recalled something and asked, speaking of which, what's the blessed land of the gods? Brother Nan, although there are many opportunities in the upper profound realm, there are also countless terrifying dangers. Even with the guidance of the 7 great artifacts, it's impossible to avoid all of them, Gu Fei said. When the first batch of the immortal emperor's successions appeared and were taken away, there were no more dangers in that place, so it was called the blessed land of the gods. Now there are many cities there. As long as they aren't competing for the treasures, most cultivators will gather there. Chapter 2955. Qin Nan walked in the lower profound realm of the Blue Dome. This time, Qin Nan only created 5 clones. 2 of them were with the Celestial Tree and Ji Xian, while the other 3 were with him. With Qin Nan's current cultivation, his limit was to create 10 origin clones, and he could guarantee that each of them could unleash 1/5 of his original body's combat strength. However, having too many clones would still affect him. Firstly, it would affect his original body's comprehension of the saber technique. Secondly, his perception and so on would decrease. That would not be worth it. Qin Nan's eyes shone brightly as he scanned his surroundings. The last time he came to the Blue Dome to absorb the origin energy, he had already noticed that the Blue Dome had undergone tremendous changes. However, he was afraid of the 7 great treasures, so he could not observe it carefully. Now that his clones were here, he did not have to worry about that anymore. He released his perception to the maximum. Qin Nan gradually frowned and stopped talking. Gu Fei and the others did not dare to disturb him when they saw that. They arrived at the middle profound realm in silence. They were now in the void, standing on the void dragon boat that Gu Fei had created with the Beast Emperor's power. It was not particularly fast, but it was silent and undetectable. Qin Nan's eyes pierced through the darkness and looked into the distance. There was a flickering immortal light. There was an aura that he had never sensed before. There was an inexplicable danger that made his heart thump slightly. However, since Qin Nan had taken the same path before, it was no longer the same as before. Sigh. Qin Nan could not help but sigh softly. Brother Nan, what's wrong with you? I saw you frowning from the beginning. Is there something wrong with the Blue Dome? Gu Fei immediately asked. If it was the Blue Dome of the past, it would be great. The Blue Dome now is not good enough. Qin Nan shook his head and said, if he had not perfected the great unity heaven execution in the illusion this time, he might not have noticed the subtle changes. What do you mean? Gu Fei was even more curious. In the past, I always thought that the Blue Dome was like a barrier that completely separated the major upper realm from the other realms. Now that I look at it, my thinking was too shallow. The Blue Dome is indeed like a barrier, But in reality, the blue dome barrier is also slowly fusing into the great upper realm. Qin Nan said indifferently, according to the plans of the blue dome's master, perhaps after 100,000 years, the blue dome will be completely integrated into the great upper realm, causing the great upper realm to reach a brand new level. However, the betrayal of the 7 great treasures, including everything they are doing now, has completely changed the blue dome. Right now, the power of the blue dome is unceasingly fading away. Perhaps in 10 years, the lower profound realm will no longer exist, and the middle profound realm will no longer exist. In 100 years, the blue dome will completely disappear. After hearing this, Gu Fei was a little puzzled. He said, Why can't it work? Brother Nan, don't be angry. I'm a man of my word. I think that what the 7 great treasures are doing now is pretty good. Hasn't this allowed us to come into contact with a higher level and obtain greater opportunities? Furthermore, the kid paused and shrunk his neck. He said, if they hadn't targeted us so much, and if we weren't irreconcilable with Song, I might not have rebelled against them. Why should I be angry? Qin Nan smiled faintly. You're right. What the 7 great treasures are doing now is endlessly beneficial to our generation, but it's going to be hard on those in the future. When they are at their weakest, they will face the myriad realms in the starry sky. Anyone from any of the realms will be able to control them and enslave them. If we develop according to the Blue Dome Master's plan, the major upper realm will ascend to a whole new level. Various powerful inheritances will continue to appear, and more genius experts will be born in the major upper realm. In the end, it will quietly develop into an incomparably vast world of martial arts. However, if we tell all of this to the world, will they think that the 7 great treasures are wrong? I'm afraid they won't. If we think that the 7 great treasures are wrong, it's just that our standpoints are different. Different standpoints, different result. There was nothing much to say. The winner was king and the loser was a bandit. It all depended on who would have the last laugh. Standpoints. Gu Fei muttered to himself, seeming to have understood something. After a long while, he shook his head and said, These problems are really giving me a headache. In short, what I need to do is to kill Tsang and stop the 7 great treasures from obtaining the Blue Dome Master's physical body. After doing all this, I'll break through to the supreme heavenly venerate level and marry all the women I've loved before. Then, Qin Nan's face darkened as he listened. Time passed little by little. Not long after, the celestial tree and Ji Xian transmitted their thoughts. We're in position. Qin Nan raised his head and looked ahead. The light in his eyes passed through a vast hazy gray mist and saw a plain full of ravines and different auras. Numerous large cities floated in the air above the plain, emanating dazzling light. The largest city was the brightest of all, and in the middle of that city was a palace that emanated a sharp, sword-like glow. It was violet gold in color, and gave off an oppressive air of nobility that prevented anyone from approaching it. Qin Nan took a closer look at the plaque above the palace. There were 3 large words written on it, Mortal Life Tower. There was a line of words on both sides of the tower. The left was for the beginning of all living beings, and the right was for the end of all living beings. The aura between the lines was extremely familiar. Chapter 2956. This mortal life tower was built by Jitsang when the upper profound realm was experiencing a great change. It's specifically used to receive the cultivators from the primary upper realm, allowing them to enjoy the tea and wine for free, and provide lots of information. Gu Fei chuckled and said, In the end, most of the cultivators here joined the Heaven Emperor Gate, thus the Mortal Life Tower became a branch of the Heaven Emperor Gate. Qin Nan unleashed his eye technique and immediately realized that the cities were considered artifacts, but they were not powerful. However, the Mortal Life Tower was different. It had a mystical aura and a mystical aura. Even his eye technique could not see through it. It could be considered a supreme artifact, which was on par with the square heavenly ancient lantern in his hand. Brother Nan, I'll lead them to the surroundings and hide first. You stay here and control the situation. If you need help, just let me know. Gu Fei said. Got it. Qin Nan nodded. After they left, Qin Nan's 3 clones exchanged glances with one another on the godly boat. They performed a hand seal at the same time, causing the glow of origin energy to be emitted from their bodies. Force of the heavens and earth, godly eyes, observed the surroundings. All of a sudden, none of the cultivators in the blessed land noticed a ripple of invisible energy in the sky. They could only feel a breeze blowing across the heavens and earth. Qin Nan's 3 clones sat down with their legs crossed and closed their eyes. The same scene appeared in their hearts, as well as the other 2 clones and his true self. At that instant, it was as if Qin Nan had turned into the heavens, overlooking the entire blessed land. He could clearly see the situation in the city. People were coming and going in front of the Mortal Life Tower. Some would stop and look into the distance at times. The main streets of the other cities were crowded with people too. The shops on both sides were selling all kinds of resources that had never appeared in the primary upper realm before. Some cultivators were taking pills to treat their injuries in hidden corners. Some cultivators were in groups of 3 to 5, engaging in lewd acts in the corners. He could clearly see the faces of all living beings. Ears of the heavens and earth, listened to everything. Qin Nan performed another hand seal. All kinds of voices were transmitted into his mind, as if he was standing beside the cultivators and listening to them talking, scolding, and cursing. In addition, the 2 doppelgangers in the middle profound realm also did the same, monitoring the heaven and earth, making the celestial tree and Ji Xian exclaim in amazement. One had to know that many quasi-emperor, immortal lord, and immortal king inheritances had appeared in the Blue Dome. Although the cultivators of the great upper realm were only heavenly venerates and rulers, it was no exaggeration to say that they were far stronger than the heavenly venerates and rulers of the great upper realm. All kinds of unique inherited treasures had their own uses. It was not an exaggeration to say that there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Apart from Qin Nan, who could use the power of heaven and earth to monitor them, anyone who wanted to monitor them, even a Supreme Tao Realm Supreme Heavenly Venerate, would be alerted. What's the situation now? When was the Mountain of Origin going to open? For this opportunity, I forcefully raised my cultivation to the peak of the Empyrean realm. My foundation has been damaged by a great deal. You ask me, who should I ask? The Heavenly Emperor Gate, the Eternal Night Sect, and the Bodhi Demon Sect are all very tight-lipped. My brother is also keeping his mouth shut. This is probably because of the Qin Nan Alliance, right? They definitely don't want to see the Mountain of Origin reopen, and let the Heavenly Emperor Gate step into a new level. Haha, this Qin Nan Alliance is really selfish. Now that the times have changed, the general trend is moving forward. The Mountain of Origin is a must, and it is also a good news for the entire Great Upper Realm. What right do they have to stop us? You don't understand, do you? Qin Nan used to be the reincarnation of a supreme heavenly venerate, and could laugh at the entire Great Upper Realm. But if the Mountain of Origin opens, everyone can become a supreme heavenly venerate, then what is he? That's a good point. Qin Nan has not appeared since the last battle. He even let the others of the Alliance snatch a quasi-emperor inheritance for him. He is really selfish. Who cares if he is selfish or not? I only know that in the current situation, if the Qin Nan Alliance continues to resist, there is only a road to death. He was able to defeat Song back then, but can he still defeat him now? Even if he can he defeat the 7 supreme treasures? In every corner, on every street, there were cultivators talking. Some topics they did not need to be taboo and did not need to be transmitted. They directly said it out loud. Qin Nan listened to all this quietly, and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Most of the words he heard were more or less the same. It seems that the heavenly Emperor Gate has been secretly pushing, and in the hearts of the cultivators of the great upper realm, spread the opinion that the Alliance is blocking the progress of the great upper realm. In this regard, they can only accept it. Long and slow tongues cannot be stopped. Moreover, on the surface they were indeed doing such a thing. Qin Nan's heart did not have any ripples. This great change involved too many things. The people of the world would not understand, and they also could not understand. Perhaps, when the dust settled, they would be hated by the world. But, so what? What they did was not to get the praise of others, or the admiration of the people. Moreover, as time passed, the things that were covered in dust would eventually be known by people. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.